Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel. I invite the protagonists from all over the world. Chapter 1. It's so noisy. Who is setting off firecrackers so early in the morning? Beep beep beep. Hawking, who was sleeping soundly, was suddenly awakened by a loud sound. He couldn't help roaring and opened his eyes. As a worker, it is rare for me to have a day off and sleep in, but the resentment of those who get up after being woken up by the noise is very scary. After a series of exports of national essence, he was suddenly shocked. This is where, glancing at his surroundings, Hawking was at a loss. This European-style retro and slightly gorgeous-looking large room was obviously inconsistent with his cheap, old and shabby little rental house. Rubbing his eyes to make sure he wasn't dazzled, he couldn't help but want to lift the quilt and go down to check. But when he saw his hands and body, he shouted in disbelief. "What's wrong with my body?" It turned out that he found that his body had suddenly shrunk a lot, and he seemed to have turned into a child. He crawled out of bed and rushed to the mirror erected in the room. Looking at the little boy about 11 or 12 years old inside, Hawking couldn't help but murmured. Could it be that I was reborn as a child? The little boy's appearance in the mirror was what he looked like when he was 11 or 12 years old. It was him. He could confirm this. But I never lived in a house like this when I was a kid. After recalling it carefully, in my memory, he had always lived in boarding school at this age. Boom! Just when he was wondering, there was a loud noise outside. Who bought the firecrackers that made such a loud noise? Putting aside his doubts first, Hawking came to the window to see the outside environment and then judge where he was. He stretched out his hand to open the curtains, and when he saw the scene outside the window, his pupils shrank immediately, and then his stomach tumbled, and he almost vomited it out. What did he see? Broken buildings, blood-stained ground, fallen bodies, planes circling in the sky, and artillery fire below. Obviously, what he heard just now was not a firecracker, but real artillery shell explosions, and even missiles washing the ground. A cruel war was taking place here. Danger, extreme danger. Run away quickly. This was Hawking's first reaction, and he forced himself to calm down as soon as his body moved. Because he realized that he had nowhere to run. In such a dangerous war, is it really safe to leave this house? Maybe if you are unlucky and get beaten up if you go out, it would be safer to stay in this room. But looking at the collapsed buildings outside the window, it seemed that staying in this room was a gamble. If a missile hit here, he would be shattered to pieces together with the house. Maybe I should find a place like a bomb shelter to hide, but I don't even know what the hell this place is. At this moment, Hawking was caught in a dilemma. After all, he is just an ordinary person, especially now that he has become a child. Finding a bomb shelter safely in this strange place is simply a fantasy. Crack! Just when Hawking was at a loss, a virtual panel suddenly popped up in front of his eyes, and then a line of words appeared on the panel. The protagonist template random drawing device is activated. You have a chance to draw for free. Do you choose to draw? Looking at the incredible scene in front of him, Hawking almost didn't hesitate much and immediately pressed the extraction button displayed on the panel. Now I am no longer confused about why I woke up in a war-torn city, why I turned into a child, and why I had such a strange virtual panel pop up. What he has to do now is to survive first. As the OK button was pressed, the virtual panel immediately began to flash quickly like a light bulb in a bar. After a while, the panel returned to normal, and a line of words appeared on it again. The drawing is over. The protagonist template drawn this time is the 13-year-old Sun Wukong from the Dragon Ball world. Do you want to load it? Help! Seeing that the randomly selected protagonist template was Goku from the Dragon Ball world, Hawking suddenly became energetic and clicked confirmation again without hesitation. If he remembered correctly, the 13-year-old Goku should have received training from Kame Sennin and participated in the world's number 1 martial arts tournament. It would be difficult for ordinary thermal weapons to hurt him. The 13-year-old Sun Wukong template is loading. The loading time is 1 hour and the cooling time is 24 hours. After loading, the same bloodline as the template protagonist will be automatically obtained. Quote. As a new line of prompts flashed on the panel, Hawking immediately felt that his body had undergone some strange changes, as if his original body was an ant and now it had become an elephant. At the same time, a series of memories also appeared in his mind, which were all the memories of Sun Wukong from his birth to the age of 13. Turning his head to look at the mirror again, he saw that his height and face had not changed at all, still the same as when he was 11 or 12 years old. It's just that his original crew cut has now grown into long black hair that stands upright, just like Sun Wukong's hairstyle in Dragon Ball. Moreover, the pajamas on his body were replaced by the Kame Senryu martial arts uniform with the character turtle written on it, and he was carrying a red stick behind his back. We only have 1 hour, find a safe place to hide first. According to the introduction on the panel, he can only maintain this state for an hour, and will be knocked back to his original shape after an hour. So now instead of trying to go out and stop the war in the city, we should first find a safe place to hide and wait for the war to end, or for the loaded protagonist template to cool down. With the decision made, the body immediately rushed out of the room at a speed that exceeded normal human limits. Nobody. After a quick glance, he found that the house was empty, so he quickly came to the street without stopping. After roughly finding a direction with less gunfire, Hawking began to run wildly. He felt that with his current body, he should be able to rush out of the city in an hour. There was no need to waste time looking for so-called air raid shelters. However, before he ran very far, he suddenly saw 2 strong soldiers in front of him, wearing military uniforms of different colors, fighting hand-to-hand on the street with long guns that fired empty bullets. Under normal circumstances, given his character, he would definitely run as far as he could when seeing this situation. In such a dangerous situation like now, let alone watching 2 soldiers fighting hand-to-hand, even if he saw a soldier shooting a civilian, he would not stop to save him. As long as his own safety is guaranteed, he doesn't mind lending a hand to help, but now his protagonist template can only be loaded for an hour at most, so he must prioritize his own safety. However, for some reason, seeing the 2 people fighting fiercely there, his blood suddenly boiled, and his body turned and rushed over involuntarily. Are you competing in martial arts? Add me. 5 seconds later, Hawking was speechless as he looked at the 2 strong soldiers who had been knocked unconscious by him. As this, could it be similar to the Maoshan Taoist priest's invitation to the gods? Not only was the protagonist's strength brought in, but the protagonist's personality was also added incidentally. Quote, "Let that girl go. No killing. Take my stick." Since knocking out the 2 soldiers, Hawking has hardly been idle along the way. Whenever he encounters someone doing evil, or whenever he encounters someone in danger, he always involuntarily wants to step forward to help, even if his reason tells him that this is not allowed, but his body just can't help it. He was already very sure that this must be affected by the loading of the protagonist template. He knows himself very well. He is definitely not a person who is so righteous and likes to fight. It can only be said that loading the protagonist template has advantages and disadvantages. The advantage is that he can instantly have the same strength as the loaded protagonist. The disadvantage is that during this period, he will be affected by the character and habits of the loaded protagonist. Soon. In order to prevent further delays, he chose remote roads as much as possible to reduce the number of incidents he encountered. Finally, he ran out of the center of the city, where the war was most intensive, and gradually came to the edge of the city. Of course, his 1-hour protagonist template time is running out. No, here we go again. Just as Hawking was advancing at high speed on the roof of the building and was about to rush out of the city, a miniature missile suddenly appeared from high altitude and shot at a 2-story house not far from him. The key is that he clearly saw a couple in the 2nd floor room of the private house with a look of horror on their faces. "I will take care of you first." Hawking pulled out the Rui golden cudgel from behind, jumped towards the 2nd-story house, ordered the golden cudgel to lengthen quickly, and then knocked away the missile that was about to hit the house. And he also landed on the 2nd-floor balcony of the house. Oh, God! The middle-aged couple who had witnessed Hawking smashing the micro-missile with his stick couldn't help but exclaimed as they looked at Hawking standing on the balcony of their home. Unfortunately, before they could recover from the emotion of escaping death, their expressions changed drastically again. Because unfortunately, at this time, another larger missile flew from the other direction. Given the size of the missile, if it hit this private house, not only the couple, but also the 2 children in the basement downstairs would not be spared. Likewise, Hawking also noticed the missile. If he was hit by such a large missile, he felt that even Sun Wukong's body might not be able to withstand it. So he put his hands together and began to gather energy. Turtle Pai Qi Gong Wave 0000. The unique move of the Kame Senryu, the Kame-style Qigong wave is launched brazenly, and the powerful energy beam goes straight towards the large missile flying towards it. Boom! There was a loud noise, and the missile was directly destroyed by Turtle Faction Qigong. Not even the dregs were left. It's finally settled now. Putting away his hands, Hawking was about to leave here and continue to escape the city. Suddenly, he felt his body soften, as if he had fallen from heaven into hell. All the strength in his body disappeared in an instant, and he closed his eyes and fainted on the ground. It's over, time's up. Hawking did not expect that after the protagonist template was loaded, there would be such side effects. The middle-aged couple who were so shocked by Hawking's turtle-style Qigong shooting missile that their jaws almost dropped. Seeing their savior fainted on the balcony, they quickly stepped forward to pick him up, and then rushed to the basement of the house. Drowsy, groggy, Hawking, who was sore all over, gradually regained some consciousness, and his eyelids moved slightly. And a little girl's voice sounded in his ears with concern in her tone. Are you okay? Hello, 3Q, why do you eat 3Q? Singing out instinctively, Hawking immediately realized something was wrong and quickly opened his eyes. What appeared in front of him were two confused children, one boy and one girl, both about 10 years old. We don't understand what you're talking about. The little girl tilted her head and turned to look at the little boy next to her. Do you understand what he is saying? The little boy also shook his head decisively. The two of them had been learning spoken English from their parents by watching DVDs since they were young, but the boy's answer just now confused them. Oh, sorry, it's my problem. May I ask who you are? Where is this place? Quote. Hawking reacted, turned to look at the room, and then asked the two children in English. As a foreign trade salesperson in my previous life, although my salary was not high, my ability in spoken English was still very good. His last memory was that he used turtle-style Qigong to explode the missile, and then the protagonist panel ended loading and he fainted on the balcony, so he planned to get some words out of the two children first. My name is Wanda Django Maximoff, you can call me Wanda. My name is Pietro Django Maximoff, you can call me Pietro. The two of them introduced themselves one after another and replied in unison. This is the basement of my house. Mom and Dad have gone out to buy food. Let us stay here. Pietro, Wanda, they are still brother and sister, this. Hawking suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart, and he asked tentatively. Do you know which country this is? Sokovia. Wanda and Pietro looked at each other, blinked and replied again. The two of them felt that the little brother their parents brought back yesterday seemed not very smart and didn't even know the name of the country they were in. It's really Marvel. I actually traveled to the Marvel world. After confirming again, Hawking almost cursed. Although he is not a senior Marvel fan, he has watched most of the Marvel movies, including some TV series, but has never read the comics. So I know a lot about the Marvel world. It's okay to say that two children have the same name, but the country Sokovia does not exist in reality. It is a small Eastern European country fictionalized by Marvel. Marvel, this is not a safe world. Not only are there countless universes, but most universes are not safe. Dozens of universes may be destroyed by a major event. Even in the movie moderator universe he watched, the danger of chaos was not small. Try to survive. After some thought, Hawking couldn't help but sigh. In fact, if Marvel wasn't too insecure, he wouldn't be too resistant to time travel. Anyway, in his previous life, his parents divorced very early, and they formed families and had children. He has always been a dispensable existence in the two families, and he has no feelings for a long time. In which world life is not life. I didn't expect that I actually saved the Scarlet Witch's parents at the beginning. This is not a loss. Looking up at little Wanda in a red coat, Hawking felt a sense of comfort in his heart. This person from the future is a multiverse-level being with super thighs. As long as he has a bright mind, he will at least be safe. The premise is that Wanda cannot be allowed to become black. But since he saved Wanda's parents, the gears of fate have turned. Wanda will definitely have a happy childhood, and the possibility of becoming a black man will be greatly reduced. What we have to consider now is how to survive in this world. His current body is only 11 or 12 years old, and he does not have any identity yet. Although the golden finger is powerful, it can only be used for an hour normally, and the side effects are not small. After communicating with two innocent children, Hawking gradually came up with an idea. Near noon, Wanda's parents, Oleg and Alina, returned to the basement of their room holding a few loaves of bread. "You're awake." When they saw Hawking awake and chatting with the two children, they suddenly looked surprised. If Hawking hadn't stopped the missile, they and the two children would have been corpses by now. So the two of them were full of gratitude to Hawking. "Thank you for saving me." Before the two of them could express their gratitude to Hawking, Hawking pretended to be grateful and spoke first. "I may have hit my head, so I don't remember anything. I heard Wanda say that it was you who saved me and brought me back. Thank you so much." The amnesia method is activated. Sure enough, after hearing Hawking's words, the couple were stunned for a moment, and then replied with sympathy. "It doesn't matter, the war ended last night, and the government is organizing rescue and restoration of urban construction. You stay here first, and when order is restored later, we will help you find your family." Quote. At this time, the couple had begun to think about Hawking's life experience in their minds. Hawking may be a descendant of a Chinese who immigrated to Sokovia. The advent of the war separated him from his family, and then he suffered some kind of injury and lost his memory. As for the special abilities he displayed, it is also understandable. There were reports about mutants in the news before. Maybe he is a mutant with special abilities. Just like their daughter can sometimes levitate small objects, their son can run much faster than a normal child. The little boy in front of them saved their family's lives, so they naturally had to take good care of him and try their best to help him find his parents. "Wouldn't this be too much trouble for you?" Hawking said, pretending to be embarrassed. With the help of Wanda's parents, a pair of locals, he can temporarily settle down for a while and then work hard to improve his strength. During the period when he just woke up, in addition to extracting a lot of information from Wanda and Pietro, he also spent time studying his golden finger. So far, he can clearly feel that after loading the protagonist template once, although the protagonist template has now dispersed, some things have remained. The first and most obvious thing is the memory. Sun Wukong's 13 years of memory did not disappear when the template loading was completed, they all remained in his mind. Of course, it's just a memory, without feelings or anything like that. It's like having a 13-year-long movie in my mind. Secondly, he can clearly feel that his body seems to have undergone some special changes. It should be as mentioned before. After using the protagonist template once, he will automatically acquire the same bloodline as the protagonist. In other words, he now has the same Saiyan blood as Son Goku. The most direct evidence is that he also has a tail growing from behind his butt. Therefore, even if he does not use the protagonist template in the future, he can still gradually improve his strength according to the training methods of Kame Senryu in his memory. Moreover, the 13-year-old Sun Wukong is only the first template. As long as he works hard to accumulate justice points according to the instructions on the panel, he can continue to obtain other protagonist templates and obtain the physique and memory of those protagonists. As for how to accumulate justice points, there is also a very detailed introduction on the panel. That is to do a just thing. Every just thing can accumulate a certain amount of justice value according to the size of the matter. When the justice value accumulates to a certain level, different protagonist templates can be randomly selected. The protagonist template extracted will be obtained permanently. As long as each loading is completed and the 24-hour cooling is completed, you can continue to use it. In the hour before he loaded Sun Wukong, he also did a lot of righteous things, and those had justice values. As for what kind of things are considered just things, according to the explanation on the panel, as long as it is something that he subjectively believes to be just in his heart, it is a just thing. For example, he feels that killing a bad person can save a group of people, so killing is also a just thing. He feels that the president has committed a crime, and killing him is just, so killing him has justice value. Even if everyone in the world says he is wrong, as long as he thinks it is just in his heart, it is just. But if he killed this person just because he hated this person unilaterally, then there would be no justice. Moreover, this kind of righteous thing must be done by himself, not with money, but with his own actions. Just like donating money to a charity foundation or donating money to a beggar is not a just thing, but if he helps an old man who has fallen down, it can be considered a just thing. The premise is that the old man cannot blackmail him, otherwise the only thing that is just is to beat the old man. One thing that makes him feel very satisfied is that his justice value will always be increased and not deducted. He can accumulate justice points by doing righteous things, but his justice points will not be deducted by doing evil things. Of course, although he is not very righteous, he has his own bottom line and will not do anything too evil. No, it's not troublesome. You are such a sensible child. Hearing that Hawking was so sensible at such a young age and spoke so politely, Elena, as a mother, was filled with maternal love and stepped forward to hug the still weak Hawking. Mom, I want it too. At this time, Pietro was a little reluctant when he saw this, and immediately jumped on the bed and joined in. How could Wanda, the sister who was born 12 minutes after Pietro, fall behind? She followed her brother and hugged him. The father Oleg in the back put down the bread in his hand and hugged his wife Elena, children Wanda and Pietro, and Hawking in the middle. Don't worry, everything will be fine. Hawking, who was held in the middle, felt slightly touched in his heart. He had to take advantage of this family in order to survive better, but this family seemed to really regard him as a relative. It seems pretty good. In his previous life, from the moment he could remember, he heard his parents endlessly quarreling, even beating each other, and in the most serious cases, they even used a knife. And never avoided him. Later, when his parents divorced, he became a burden, being kicked back and forth like a ball. When his parents started new families and had children, he became even more uninterested. So for this kind of loving family, to be honest, he was still a little envious in his heart. Although their lives are not rich, the family always laughs and laughs together. A week later, Sokovia gradually returned to normal order. Because too many people died in the city and there was a lack of a large labor force, both Oleg and Elena found acceptable jobs. On this day, as usual, they took Hawking to a special agency dealing with missing persons. I'm very sorry, because of the war, the city information is missing, we can't find information that matches him, and there are no characteristics that match him in the information registered to find missing family members. Therefore, his parents and family members must have unfortunately died in this war. You can choose to send him to an orphanage or adopt him. Quote. The fat female staff member explained to Oleg and Elena in the room with a very regretful tone. After a while, Elena and Oleg, with reddish eyes, walked out of the room and came to Hawking, who was playing with Wanda and Pietro. They slowly knelt down and asked in a gentle tone, "Little Hawking, are you willing to be our child and Wanda and Pietro's brother?" Hawking looked at Oleg, then at Elena, and smiled slightly. "I do. I have a brother. I have a brother." Before Elena and Oleg could speak, Wanda and Pietro were already cheering. After spending a week together, they all liked this brother who was very good at taking care of them. 2 months later, in the basement. 287, 288, 289,300. Hawking was wearing a small vest. He gritted his teeth and did the 300th push-up before he got up with difficulty and sat down on the ground. As expected of a Saiyan's body, it is indeed very durable. His current body looks like that of an 11 or 12-year-old, and he has not yet entered junior high school under normal circumstances. If he had trained according to the method he has been practicing these days, he would have been exhausted long ago. At least myolysis is definitely indispensable. But every time he practiced until his whole body was exhausted, as long as he had a full meal and slept, he would be full of energy and fully recovered the next day. And I can clearly feel that my body is getting stronger every day. In just 2 months, his strength was no less than that of an average adult male. Now, he finally realizes the happiness of those fitness people who are obsessed with exercise. This is actually just like playing a game to upgrade, and it has a sense of accomplishment. When a person finds himself making progress every day, he becomes truly addicted. Even now the economy is still a little bad. Sokovia is now being rebuilt, and Oleg and Elena have good jobs. Normally, raising 3 children would not be a big problem, but the Saiyan's physique is too edible. If Hawking really eats freely, the wages of Oleg and Elena alone will not be enough for him to eat alone. You must know that in the world's number 1 martial arts club, Kame Senin won the first prize of 500,000 yuan, but Wukong ate 480,000 yuan in one meal. This is why his current training intensity has not actually reached its maximum. He was thinking about whether he should adopt the Wukong template. With Wukong's strength, it wouldn't be a big problem to go out and make some extra money. Nowadays, the security in Sokovia is not that good. You can steal some money by cheating, and by the way, you can also accumulate some justice points. But after thinking about it carefully, he finally rejected the idea. Because he suddenly remembered that there seemed to be a Hydra lair in Sokovia, and its leader, Baron Strucker, liked to study people with special abilities. If he takes action and is discovered, not only will he be in danger, but he will also be in danger for Wanda's family. If he could maintain his Wukong state, he wouldn't be afraid. He could go and destroy a Hydra base single-handedly. After all, a Hydra base may not be as powerful as the Red Ribbon Army. But he can only maintain Wukong form for an hour, and will be exhausted after it's over. Although this side effect has become smaller and smaller as his own strength has increased, it is still very dangerous. The most important point, which is also a headache for him, is that after transforming into Wukong, his character has been affected to a certain extent, and he cannot handle problems as rationally as he does now. He is too kind, too righteous and likes to fight too much. So he felt that he shouldn't be anxious. It was only 2000, and it was still 10 years before Iron Man appeared. Wait for a while, at least wait until your strength is almost the same, and then start thinking about making money and justice. After resting for a while, Hawking stretched out his tail hidden around his waist, then rolled up a chair and began to continue exercising his tail. The tail is the weak point of Saiyans. Once it is held, the whole body will be instantly weak, so it is natural to spend time in advance to exercise. Hawking, come out quickly. The moon is so full today. Let's go to the balcony on the second floor to watch the moon. While he was working hard to train his tail, Wanda and Pietro poked their heads out from the crack in the door and waved excitedly. Hawking froze when he heard this, then turned around and smiled. Look, I don't like looking at the moon. Just kidding, he has the same Saiyan blood as Sun Wukong in his body now. If he goes out and sees the full moon, the whole of Sokovia will be lively. It is estimated that there will be big news in the whole world the next day. King Kong is causing trouble in Sokovia. Then major organizations around the world will send people to trouble him. Normally, there are 12 full moons in a year, and he will have to avoid every full moon in the future until he can control the transformation or maintain his sanity after transformation. All right. Upon hearing Hawking's answer, Wanda and Pietro immediately showed disappointed looks on their faces. In their eyes, Hawking is a very mature and stable big brother who is very good at taking care of them, so they always want to pull Hawking together in everything. In addition, their parents have to get off work very late every day, and they are also very bored. This way, after you watch the moon, go to the kitchen on the first floor and I'll make some noodles for you to eat. Looking at Wanda and Pietro's disappointed looks, Hawking smiled and comforted them. The special family environment in his previous life made him learn to live independently very early, and he could naturally do things like cooking. Although it is not as good as any famous chef, ordinary home-cooked food is not a problem. He is also very embarrassed that he has been living in this house and doing nothing but eating. Now he basically pays for 3 meals a day at home, and he also pays for all the housework. He treats it as exercise. In fact, this is in line with the Kamezen Ryu's philosophy of cultivation, that living and working is cultivation. Foreigners' tastes are different from Chinese people's, but it doesn't matter, they can make appropriate adjustments. Wanda and Pietro like to eat the tomato and egg noodles he makes the most, the sweet and sour kind. And those Western food, well, to be honest, it's not that difficult to learn now. Oh, great. When the two little guys heard that they had noodles to eat, the disappointment on their faces was wiped away, and they immediately clapped their hands and nodded happily. In their eyes, Brother Hawking is so awesome. He can cook all kinds of delicious food, and he also knows a lot of knowledge. He will tell them all kinds of stories they have never heard before, and he has always protected them like an adult. Hawking, this is a comic that my father gave me before. I have already read it, so I can lend it to you to read. Before Pietro left with his sister Wanda, he suddenly thought of something and handed a comic book in his hand to Hawking as if he wanted to take credit. Thanks. Hawking rubbed the head of Pietro, who was half a head shorter than himself, and took the comic. Although he is not interested in comics, this is what the child wants, and rejection will make the child sad. And mine. This is my most favorite disc. I give it to you. Not to be outdone, Wanda handed over a disc, which was the first season of her favorite sitcom, The Dick Van Dyke Show. Thank you too. Hawking also rubbed little Wanda's head. After the two left, he put the comics and discs aside and prepared to wash up and go to the kitchen on the first floor. However, just as he was getting dressed and ready to go upstairs, he accidentally caught a glimpse of the cover of the comic, and his whole expression suddenly changed. How is this going? It turned out that on the cover of the comic, a woman holding a shield and a man with a red skull were fighting, with a few words prominently marked next to them. Captain Carter versus the Red Skull. Captain Carter versus the Red Skull. Shouldn't it be Captain America versus the Red Skull? Picking up the comic and flipping through it quickly, Hawking couldn't help but murmured. Could it be that the 838 universe I traveled through? Hawking thought of the 838 universe because he remembered that in the crazy multiverse, in the 838 universe where Wanda went, Captain America Steve became Captain Carter of the United Kingdom. And it just so happens that there are mutants in that universe. Mutants exist. This was already told to Oleg and Elena when they adopted him. Wanda can control some things to levitate with her mind, Pietro can run much faster than a normal child, and Hawking has shown the ability before and now has a tail. In the eyes of the Ogles, they are complete mutants. However, most ordinary people are currently very afraid of and discriminate against the existence of mutants. Sokovia is even better, because all the energy is spent on the internal war, and everyone's hatred of mutants is not that strong. I heard that in New York, the locals' hatred of mutants is much more serious. If the police encounter a mutant and something goes wrong, they will most likely shoot directly. Especially if they are black mutants, they may immediately empty their magazines. Some officials have even been proposing to repass the previously repealed Mutant Registration Act to record all mutants for easier management and prevention. Because they were worried about the danger of their 3 children's mutant identities being exposed, the couple had always warned them not to use their abilities in front of outsiders. In particular, Hawking had to hide his tail well when he went out. If it was exposed, he would pretend it was an ornament. If it's Universe 838, then little Wanda is in some danger. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but rub his head. If this is really Universe 838, it means that shortly after Thanos' invasion, Wanda of the main universe will occupy Wanda's body in this universe through the method of dream walking, and then kill the entire Illuminati. Forget it, I can't say whether it's the 838 universe or not. It's still early anyway. If the soldiers come to cover up the water and the earth, there will always be a way. It's useless to think so much now. With his current strength, he can't stop it at all. It's better to wait until more protagonist templates are unlocked in the future and then try to solve it. Shaking his head to shake away his worries, Hawking prepared to take a shower and make some noodles. More than 3 weeks later, Hawking got up at 5 o'clock as usual. After going out for a 10-kilometer run and finishing with 300 push-ups, 500 squats and 1,000 sit-ups in the basement, I started to prepare a hearty breakfast. Sandwiches, milk, noodles, grilled sausages, and fried eggs filled the table. Anyway, Wanda and the others couldn't finish the food, so he could collect it all, and absolutely nothing would be wasted. Oleg and Elena got up and saw a table of breakfast. They once again lamented that Hawking was so sensible and proficient in cooking at such a young age, and he would definitely become an excellent chef in the future. On the other hand, I silently made up my mind to make money, otherwise I would be a little stressed about eating. In the eyes of the couple, Hawking, who was sensible, obedient and precocious like a little adult, must have had a very unfortunate childhood. The children of the poor should become parents early. This is true in any country in the world. They are already living in poverty, but their 2 children, Wanda and Pietro, are still relatively happy. At least they will not be asked to learn to cook and do housework at this age, and will try to give them a happy childhood. But they can understand it. Because both children are mutants, they often follow news reports related to mutants. After awakening, Many mutants will be unable to control their abilities and harm their families, and some will have their appearance change drastically, making them look very scary. So when they find out that their children are mutants, not all parents can accept it. They will even be extremely disgusted and afraid of their children, viewing them as monsters. Perhaps Hawking's family was like this before, and he was so precocious. Thinking about it, they feel even more sorry for little Hawking. Wanda, Pietro, it's time to get up and have breakfast. Following Elena's shout, the brother and sister Wanda and Pietro rushed down from the second floor, fighting. Today is Sunday. The family is sitting on the sofa in the living room after breakfast. Oleg starts to put in the disc and plays the 23rd episode of the second season of The Dick Van Dyke Show. When Sokovia was in chaos, Oleg lost his job and relied on selling CDs to support his family's livelihood. Although I have a formal job now, I still have a lot of discs at home. Hawking was also sitting among the family. He was not very interested in these discs, but he liked and cherished the current atmosphere because he had never had such an experience in his previous life. Ding dong. Just as the family was laughing at the sitcom, the doorbell suddenly rang. I'll open the door. Hawking stood up on his own initiative. Opening the door, a bald old man in a wheelchair and a young man wearing strange sunglasses appeared in front of him. Good morning, kid. The bald old man greeted Hawking with a gentle look. Just after saying hello, a look of surprise appeared on his face. Strange, this is the first time this has happened. As a top-level 4 mutant with telepathy and mind control abilities, apart from his old friend Magneto who wears a helmet and the White Queen who was once the Black King's side, there are really few people who can isolate his telepathy. 2 days ago, through the brainwave enhancement machine, he discovered a mutant of the right age here in Sokovia. This time he came here to recruit him to his mutant school. I just didn't expect that as soon as I opened the door, I met a mutant who could isolate his telepathy. It seemed that this family had not one mutant, but 2. This second one was not discovered by him because of his ability to isolate telepathy. External spiritual energy has invaded the host's brain. To ensure that the system's existence is not discovered, automatic shielding is turned on. Looking at the text prompts on the panel that suddenly popped up, and looking at the shapes of the 2 people in front of him, Hawking didn't know that the famous Professor X and Cyclops were coming to the door. Fortunately, the panel automatically intercepted Professor X's telepathic energy, otherwise all the secrets about him would be gone. Good morning, gentlemen, what can I do? Hawking smiled slightly, without any special expression on his face. Since the other party cannot telepathize with him, there is nothing to be afraid of. According to his understanding, Professor. What he was thinking about now was what was the purpose of Professor X's sudden visit. It shouldn't have anything to do with him anyway, he's not a mutant. Is it because of Wanda and Quicksilver? But he remembered that Wanda was not a mutant in the main universe, and that her power came from Sithorn's chaos magic. Quicksilver seemed to have obtained superpowers because of his ability to modify reality, and was later further developed by the Mind Scepter. But this is the 838 universe, and many settings may be different. So he planned to remain calm and observe first before talking. I'm Professor Charles from Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters in New York, and I'd like to speak with your parents. Professor X showed a gentle smile again. At this time, the voice of his father Oleg asking came from the living room. Hawking, who is it? 2 strange gentlemen, they say they are professors from a New York school. Hawking shouted back. When Oleg and Elena heard this, they immediately paused the TV and walked over together. The moment he saw Oleg and Elena, Professor X activated his telepathy and began to read their memories. Every time he comes to recruit students, he will check the parents' memories immediately. If you are the kind of parent who is more afraid and hostile towards mutants, and doesn't know that your child is a mutant, he would not tell the other party that he was the principal of a mutant school, and would only enroll students in the name of a normal school in New York. For example, a few years ago in Boston, a student who could release cold energy was recruited. After telepathically sensing the attitudes of 2 parents, he did not tell the other parent the truth at that time. If it is the kind of parent who already knows that his child is a mutant, or who is not hostile to mutants, then he will choose to tell the other party the truth. It's actually 3, no, I can't be completely sure. After reading the memories of Oleg and Elena, Professor X showed surprise again. I originally thought there was only one mutant child here, but I didn't expect there to be three, two of which were in rather special circumstances. The little Pietro who could be completely confirmed was the one he sensed through the brainwave enhancement machine. The second Pietro's sister, little Wanda, did not have the brainwaves unique to mutants under his induction, but she also has the ability to control thoughts, so it is not certain whether she is a mutant or not. The third is little Hawking, the adopted son adopted by the couple more than 2 months ago. But it is also not completely confirmed that they are mutants. But in his heart, he prefers that the other person is a mutant, because it fits the characteristics of a mutant. First, a tail grew out of the back of the little guy's butt. Many mutants have some animal characteristics. Secondly, the little guy is physically stronger than ordinary children under normal circumstances. After an explosion, he can actually intercept missiles and launch powerful energy attacks. This is also very mutant. Some mutants with great potential have this characteristic before they fully master their abilities. Finally, and the most important evidence is that the little guy can passively shield his psychic perception, so it is very reasonable that he cannot sense the other party's brain waves. Little Wanda is very strange in this regard. He can see little Wanda's memory. Logically speaking, if he is a mutant, he should emit special brain waves belonging to mutants, but in fact he does not. To say that she is not a mutant, little Wanda's memory does not contain modifications, experiments, or other special experiences. It is the control of her naturally awakened thoughts. Regardless of whether they were mutants or not, he decided to enroll the 3 children into his school. Especially little Hawking, who has many abilities and is very suitable for fighting. His mind is also precocious and he will be well guided in the future. He is very suitable to join his X-Men. If he went astray and was abducted by Magneto in the future, it would be another headache for him. That's the thing, we are a school dedicated to protecting and guiding mutant children. In the living room, Professor X explained the general situation of his school and the purpose of his trip. After hearing this, Oleg and Elena also hesitated. According to Professor Charles, his mutant school is indeed the most suitable place for 3 children to go to school. They have been worried that their 3 children will be in danger if their mutant identities are exposed in the future when they go to school in Sokovia. And Professor Charles did give many similar examples. They didn't feel that Professor Charles would deceive them. The reason was that they felt an inexplicable sense of trust when they saw this professor. What really makes them hesitate is that the school is in New York, which is a completely different country. It is too far to go to school there. They can't see each other several times a year, and they really can't bear to leave. Professor Charles, after some consideration, the safety of their children outweighed their reluctance, and they finally decided to let their 3 children go to school in New York. But as soon as they opened their mouths, they were interrupted by Hawking, who had been listening to both sides. "Mom, Dad, can you let me talk to Professor Charles alone?" "No problem at all." Oleg and Elena were stunned for a moment and nodded at the same time. Because Hawking usually behaves very maturely, and because he saved their family by intercepting missiles before, the couple's attitude towards Hawking is different from Pietro and Wanda, and they truly treat him as a big child. If there is any relevant matter, I will also respect some of his own opinions. "Professor," the old one and the young one just moved from the living room to the basement. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" "Professor, you should know that the country of Sokovia is very unsafe. Even if the war is over and there is a short period of peace, no one knows when the next war will break out. I am very worried that my father and mother will be in danger when my brothers and sisters and I go to your school. So I hope the professor can help them with immigration and find them a suitable job in New York." Quote. Hawking said to Charles seriously. Going to a mutant school is a good choice for him now. It is safe to grow in Sokovia, but it is too slow for his strength, and it is not really safe. War, Hydra and the destruction of the entire Sokovia in the future. Of course, the mutant school is not completely safe, but at least the X-Men are there to support it. He doesn't really agree with Professor. But such a person is not bad as a teammate, at least he will not sacrifice himself for profit. Professor X also likes Pua people, but is he the kind of person who will be Pua? If it's beneficial to him, just go with the flow. If it's not beneficial or harmful, then find a reason to reject it. Professor X can't read his mind anyway. It's better than Magneto. From the perspective of mutants as a whole, Magneto is right. He is completely on the side of mutants and can even be ruthless enough to kill all non-mutants. But if you are Magneto's teammate, he might sacrifice you for the benefit of mutants as a whole. Mystique is so loyal and has such a good relationship, she doesn't show mercy at all when it's time to kill. Not to mention Hawking, he is not a mutant. Ogle, Elena and little Wanda are not mutants. Only little Pietro is a mutant. He and Professor X are in the same position. Neither the mutants nor the humans want to be completely wiped out. What Hawking values now is that the resources of the mutant school can greatly accelerate the improvement of his strength. He can eat every meal and exercise to the maximum extent without worrying about abnormal behavior attracting the attention of normal people. He can compete and fight with the masters of the mutant school to stimulate the potential of the Saiyan blood. He can also use the advanced high technology of the mutant school and the superpowers of mutants to practice the Kame-sen style more efficiently. If he develops at the current rate in Sokovia, it may take him 10 years to truly match the full strength of 13-year-old Goku, and it may take him 2 or 3 years to go to a mutant school. Maybe if he catches up well, he can gain some justice points, which is the foundation of his strength. In short, he felt that strength was king, and only by becoming stronger as soon as possible could he be able to cope with everything. But if possible, he still wants to take over Oleg and Elena, who adopted him. For ordinary people, Sokovia, where wars break out from time to time, is too dangerous. Hawking, you are kind and mature. You should also understand that if every student makes such a request, it will be a great burden for our mutant school. Professor X looked at Hawking with admiration and satisfaction on his face. He risked his life to activate his abilities to save a strange couple, but eventually fainted due to excessive use of his abilities. Now when he had the opportunity to go to a school for mutants in New York, he did not forget the safety of his adoptive parents. This is obviously a very kind-hearted child. As for the amnesia, he is not as easy to deceive as the Olegs. The amnesia is obviously fake. This child must have had a not-so-good experience. Otherwise, they would not be so precocious and show a desire and cherishment for family affection. This is a bonus for him. Being able to maintain kindness even when his early life was not very good is true kindness. Coupled with his demonstrated fighting talent and ability, he was actually very willing to agree to Hawking's request. Because that's nothing to him. But if you agree so easily, it is obviously not very good for a child. He will not cherish things that are too easy to get. I know, so it's not like I'm giving nothing. According to what you said, Professor, the original intention of the mutant school was to guide mutants in learning to use their abilities and protect mutants from being persecuted. Then the school definitely needs some mutants to play the role of protectors. You let the 3 of us brothers and sisters go to school for free and helped my parents immigrate to New York to settle down. Then I am willing to play the role of protector. Quote. Hawking looked at Professor X, his tone full of confidence. Professor X was even more appreciative after hearing this. At this age, it's great to have such judgment and courage. Okay, I agree to your request, but it is not that easy to become a protector. You need to wait a few years until you reach adulthood and pass the assessment to be qualified. Quote. Professor, you will not regret this decision today. A bright smile suddenly appeared on Hawking's face. He was not sure whether Professor. Ha ha ha, I think so too. Professor X blinked and replied in a joking tone. After the two left the room, Professor X proposed to the Olegs that he would help them immigrate to New York and find suitable jobs for them to settle near the school. Naturally, the couple had no reason to refuse such a good thing. In a war-torn country like Sokovia, except for the rich and elite, it is basically difficult for ordinary people to immigrate, especially to New York. If you can go to New York to live safely, who would want to stay in a place where you don't know where you will be bombed one day? Sokovia is not an invasion by foreign enemies and everyone fighting to defend the country, but a civil war, a war caused by internal conflicts among the nation. Only politicians and careerists think about fighting for power because they and their families do not have to go to the battlefield. Common people just want to live a stable life and don't care who is in power. After going to New York, not only can I live a peaceful life, but I will also be much closer to where my children go to school. If normal people made such a promise to them, they would definitely not believe it at all. How could such a pie fall from the sky? But Professor Charles's words seemed to have a kind of magic power, and they couldn't help but believe it after hearing it, without any doubt. So, after simple preparation and processing, a family of 5 followed Professor X and left the chaotic country of Sokovia and embarked on a journey to immigrate to New York. The war caused Oleg and Elena to lose all their relatives and friends, so they didn't have much to worry about. The Bronx, upstate New York. Your parents, I have arranged to work in a company in the city, and I will take you to the school next. Don't be afraid, there are many kids like you in the school, and you will make a lot of friends. Quote. In the speeding car, Professor Hawking also hugged his younger siblings, patted their backs, and replied to Professor X. Thank you, Professor. The company that Professor. He still understands this. He doesn't know whether Professor X is truly kind or hypocritical. He only looks at people by what they do, not what they think. Even if it is hypocrisy or use, as long as the other party pays, he will be willing to repay it in the future. The car drove for about 45 minutes from the Bronx to the suburban Westchester County. A huge manor-type school appeared in front of Hawking. Professor X, you are really rich. Xavier's school for gifted youngsters was actually transformed from the family's mansion by Professor X, who himself is a super-rich second generation. Many of the high-tech equipment in the school, including an invisible aircraft, were built with Professor X's money. The car drove directly into the school and stopped in front of the castle-like teaching building. Professor, you are back. Something has happened that requires your decision. When I entered the castle just in time for get out of class to end, a group of students, large and small, rushed out of the classroom. Many of them had unusual appearances. When they saw Professor X, they would stop and say hello with great respect. At this time, a slim, white-haired female teacher who had just come out of the classroom also spotted Professor X. I know everything, go and call all the teachers to my office. This is Professor Ororo, your future math and physics teacher, who will also guide you on how to control your abilities more effectively. Quote. After hearing what the white-haired female teacher said, Professor. When Aurora saw the 3 Hawkings, her expression immediately softened, and she smiled and raised her hand to say hello. Welcome to Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, I believe you will love it here. After saying hello, she followed Professor X's instructions and went to meet other teachers. Hawking also identified the female teacher through her name and characteristics. Storm is a top-level 3 mutant who can control the weather in a small area and summon lightning, storm and ice attacks. There are 5 levels of mutants, with level 1 being the lowest and level 5 being the highest. Under normal circumstances, the level of mutants is determined innately, but most of them cannot fully control their abilities at the beginning, and their power is not as good as their own level, so they need to be developed slowly. For example, a level 2 mutant has his peak at level 2, and a level 3 mutant may only show level 2 power, but after training and development, he can eventually grow to level 3. However, low-level mutants may not be able to defeat high-level mutants. This should be considered from many aspects such as the mutant's ability direction, mentality and personal combat experience. Just like an auxiliary level 3 mutant, he may not be able to beat an offensive level 2 mutant, and a level 3 ordinary office worker with similar abilities may not be able to beat a level 2 battlefield veteran. P.O. Please take the 3 little guys to find a room to stay in, and then get them familiar with the school. Seeing Aurora leave, Professor. The school building has 7 floors. Except for some rooms that have been converted into classrooms and special-purpose rooms, all other rooms can be used to live in. Because it is a mutant school and only recruits young mutants, there are not many students in the entire school, only 34 including all the professors. Even with the luxury of 1 room per person, there are still many empty rooms. Normally, mutants after graduating from school can freely choose to enter society, stay in school as teachers, or join the X-Men. Professor X told them all this on the way. P.O. What is your ability? When Peter, who seemed to have a good temper, took them on a tour in selected rooms, Hawking also took the opportunity to chat and wanted to know more about the mutant school. He had seen the mutant movie series, but it was a long time ago. He still remembered the general plot and character traits, but he had forgotten many details. For example, he knew the female teacher Storm just now was called Storm, but as for the name Aurora, he didn't remember much. Of course, he must know the famous ones like Magneto, Professor X, Wolverine and Phoenix. Me, I can transform my body into a physique similar to steel, with stronger physique, strength and defense capabilities. Peter smiled and activated his ability, and his entire body immediately turned into a color similar to steel. Oh, that's so cool. Little Pietro's eyes lit up and he couldn't help but touch it. Little Wanda, who was holding one of Hawking's arms next to her, also poked her head out of curiosity. Actually, my dream is to become an artist like Picasso. When I have time, I can paint portraits for you. Peter didn't mind little Pietro getting started and said with a smile. It turns out to be Colossus. Hawking looked Pio up and down and paused for 2 seconds in the middle. The toughest man among mutants. Just choose these three, they happen to be connected together. After confirming the room, putting down their luggage and sorting it out, the three of them walked around the school under the leadership of Colossus. There are classrooms, laboratories, canteens, gardens, swimming pools, basketball courts, football fields, and even horses and horse farms. Hawking can only keep sighing that the school is really rich. And at the same time that Colossus was taking Hawking and 3 new students around the school's principal's office also held an emergency meeting. As for the mutant attack on the president, my idea is that it must have been done by Magneto. Cyclops Scott affirmed. The red-haired Chin next to him shook her head. Scott, I don't think so. Although Eric had the ability to control this from prison, it was not reasonable. Because this will only harm his plan for mutant prosperity. Quote. Professor X obviously has the same point of view as Chin. Storm Girl over there raised her hand. It's great now. Those guys from the government are going to introduce the mutant registration bill from last time. If you want to know what's going on, you still have to find the mutant who attacked the president. Chin and Aurora, go and bring him back. Scott and I went to the prison to talk to Eric. Quote. After some discussion, Professor X made a decision. In the evening, the school cafeteria. Can I eat whatever I want here? Hawking's eyes began to light up as he looked at the students who were queuing up for lunch. Colossus smiled and nodded. Of course, all food, drinks and daily necessities in the school are free. You can eat as much as you want. At this time, he did not realize the seriousness of the matter. Come on, let's get in line. No rush, you take Pietro and Wanda to line up to eat first, and I'll wait until everyone has finished eating. Hawking waved his hand. No need to do this, there is enough food in the cafeteria, and our chef, Mr. Huge, has the ability to quickly process all the ingredients into food. Moreover, he always purchases enough ingredients to feed the entire school for 3 days, so there will be no shortage of food. Quote. Colossus knew that the 3 Hawkins came from war-torn Sokovia, and thought it was because of the shortage of food there. In addition to professors and students, there are many staff members in the entire mutant school. These staff members are all mutants and former graduates of the school. Because most of their abilities are auxiliary, and their upper limit is level 1 or 2, they basically have no combat effectiveness. After graduation, they could not integrate well into ordinary people in the outside world, so they chose to stay in school and work. Chefs who cook, gardeners who prune flowers and plants, aunts who clean and tidy up the room, maintenance workers of various equipment, etc. Anyway, Professor X is not short of money and his salary is very good. You don't know, Hawking is a big bad wolf who can eat a lot. He can eat a lot of things in one meal. At this time, little Wanda stretched out her hand and made a gesture. Upon seeing this, Hawking huffed and began to scratch her belly. If you dare to say that I am the big bad wolf, then you will be Little Red Riding Hood. Be careful that the big bad wolf eats Little Red Riding Hood in one bite. Little Wanda suddenly giggled. Little Pietro next to him also agreed with his sister's point of view, and explained to Colossus seriously. I tell you, Hawking has a universe in his belly. I have never seen him full. Maybe this is his mutant ability. It's so pitiful. Come on, it doesn't matter, just feel free to eat. The kind-hearted Colossus felt sympathy again in his heart when he heard that Hawking had never had a full stomach, and immediately pulled the 3 of them to line up. This is too delicious. Colossus looked at Hawking who had stood up for the 30th time to get food. The fork in his hand stayed in midair for a long time without falling. In his opinion, the food that Hawking got every time he queued up was enough for an adult man to eat. However, Hawking had already eaten 30 servings and just stood up and said he was only 5 minutes full. Hawking is very strong, even bigger than his father. I have long suspected that his ability is actually because he can eat so much, that's why he is very strong. Looking at the stunned Colossus, little Pietro said proudly. Colossus smiled and shook his head. Well, Mr. Yuji is going to be very busy today. And just as Colossus said, the fat chef Yuji over there saw Hawking appearing in front of him again, and couldn't help but cover his forehead. You know what, kid? You've almost eaten a whole day's worth of school food right now. There are dozens of people in the school, many of them are children, and they don't eat much in one meal. Among the adults, many women have the habit of losing weight and keeping in shape. Therefore, the 30 portions of food Hawking ate were indeed almost enough for a normal school day. Isn't that because the food you cook is so delicious, sir? By the way, sir, your ability is mind control. Hawking asked curiously as he watched the various ingredients behind Yuji being automatically cleaned, cut, and cooked. The spoons in the front were also unattended and they were automatically serving dishes. Hearing Hawking praise the deliciousness of his food, Yuji's face suddenly looked much better. It's mind control, but it's incomparable to Professor Chin. When my ability is developed to its limit, I can only control things weighing a few kilograms. Thank you. I'll probably have to eat about 30 more portions before I'm full. Thank you for your hard work, sir. Hawking took the plate that was already full of food, and before leaving, he kindly reminded Yug, which made Yug's head grow bigger in an instant. There was no way, he came to the mutant school just to have enough food, so of course he couldn't be polite. The abilities of mutants are not completely different, such as telepathy. Many mutants have it, but there are basically none who can reach the level of Professor X. The same goes for mind control. As a first-level mutant, Yug can only control kitchen utensils to assist cooking when he is developed to the limit. And the 5th-level mutant gene, even as a child, could easily levitate cars on a street. It looks like I'm going to do a big purchase early tomorrow morning. Yuji calculated that the ingredients left in the kitchen were probably enough for Hawking to eat alone. Half an hour later, when all the students in the cafeteria had left, Hawking was finally full. This was the first time since he time traveled that he was completely full. Don't professors usually eat with us? Hawking asked casually on the way to his room after eating and leaving the cafeteria. During the entire meal, none of the school professors, including Professor X, Storm, and Cyclops, were present. Thinking back to the scene of the storm goddess looking solemn when she entered the school in the afternoon, he felt a little uneasy. We usually eat in the cafeteria, but we really didn't see it today. Colossus also had a puzzled look on his face. Hawking's body froze when he heard these words. Why are you in trouble on the first day of school? Shaking his head, he felt that maybe he was overthinking. During the chat with Colossus, he didn't hear any news about Wolverine Logan being in school. Generally, all the major events of the X-Men in his memory included Wolverine. However, he still had to be vigilant. He decided not to do extreme training in the past few days and would not start until he was thoroughly familiar with the school situation. However, not long after the 4 Hawkings left the cafeteria, a very muscular bearded man wearing a leather jacket and smoking a cigar strode into the cafeteria. Hey Yug, bring me some dinner. Logan, when did you come back and finish the matter? Yug laughed when he saw Logan. The two of them were the only 2 smoking enthusiasts in the entire school, and they often smoked and chatted together in the cafeteria. I just came back less than 3 hours ago and things haven't been done yet. There is nothing at the address the professor gave me. I wanted to come back and ask the professor for help and check my brain, but he left the school because of something and asked me to be a nanny here for a few days. Quote. Logan complained as he pulled out a cigar and threw it to Yug. Yug took the cigar and lit it. No wonder I haven't seen Professor and them tonight. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm a little late. There is a new kid in school today who is very good at eating. He ate all the ingredients I had in the past 2 days. Quote. Well, it looks like I'm going to have a look at the refrigerator on the 2nd floor. Maybe I can find some snacks for cushions. Logan looked at the clean kitchen and had no choice but to turn around and leave. Although it wouldn't have any impact if he didn't eat anything, the hunger of not eating would still be there. On the other side, After Hawking returned to his room and performed hundreds of warm-up exercises before going to bed, he took a shower in the bathroom, changed into pajamas, and sat cross-legged on the bed. Since you don't plan to do extreme physical exercise these days, let's spend more time on chi concentration training. He stretched out his middle finger, and then focused his thoughts on it. A ball of white energy began to slowly condense, then faltered and disappeared. Chi is a name for energy. As long as it is alive, even flowers and plants contain qi. Kame Senryu's Kame style qigong is to concentrate the qi in the body and then burst out a super destructive energy attack. Although Hawking's current physical strength cannot use turtle qigong like the 13-year-old Wukong, he can still sense the qi in his body with Wukong's memory and then slowly exercise. The turtle style qigong won't be used later, so it would be good to get an ordinary qi bomb to use first. When your body becomes strong enough in the future and you become more proficient in mastering qi, it is not impossible to research and develop some qi-related moves on your own. For example, Yamcha's qi bomb, Dumpling's Dongdong wave, Tianjin Fan's sun fist, Klin's qi yuan slash, etc. As long as you are willing to spend time, you can definitely study them. Boom, boom, boom. Just when Hawking was finally able to maintain the existence of an air bomb the size of a marble on his middle finger, there was a sudden knock on the door. After getting up and opening the door, little Wanda and little Pietro stood at the door wearing pajamas and holding pillows. Hawking, we can't sleep and want to be with you. It turned out that the brother and sister had just arrived in this strange environment and were a little scared to stay in their own rooms, so they ran over to find their brother Hawking, who could give them a sense of security. Come in. Hawking touched their heads and led them in. Wanda and Pietro are only 10 years old now. Among normal people, they are children in the 2nd or 3rd grade. It is normal for them to be a little scared. It will be fine if you stay for a few days and get familiar with the place. After putting Wanda and Pietro to sleep, Hawking sat up again and continued to practice qi. It's almost time for bed. Seeing that the time was almost 12 o'clock, he started to prepare to sleep. But as soon as he lay down on the bed, he faintly heard some more footsteps upstairs. Now his body is stronger than normal people, and his 5 senses are naturally stronger than normal people. Call out. At this moment, a little girl about the same age as him upstairs suddenly fell through the roof. Hawking quickly stood up and caught her. What happened? The little girl who can walk through walls is a phantom cat. When he was eating in the cafeteria, Colossus introduced him to some students in the school. Hawking, many men with guns broke into my room, and they wanted to attack me. Phantom Cat explained nervously. Ah! As soon as Phantom Cat finished speaking, a terrifying scream suddenly echoed through the entire mutant school. Hearing the scream, Hawking, Phantom Cat, Wanda and Pietro, who were woken up, all covered their ears in pain. It's Teresa. Teresa is also a student at the school, about the same age as Wanda, and has the ability to scream at a wide range. At present, it seems that he was also attacked like the Phantom Cat. The screams disappeared after a moment, and heavy footsteps immediately sounded outside the door. Load the protagonist template. Without the slightest hesitation, Hawking called out the panel and loaded the template of the 13-year-old Sun Wukong. Now it is not a big problem for him to defeat a few strong men with bare hands, but it is obviously impossible to deal with a group of elite warriors with guns. Besides, he also has to protect Wanda and Pietro. His hair instantly stood up, and he wore a Kame Senryu martial arts uniform and a wish stick. He had already completed his transformation before the door was kicked open. Follow me. Hawking, who transformed into the form of Wukong, rushed towards 3 soldiers holding tranquilizer guns and preparing to shoot, and raised his hand 3 times. The 3 soldiers flew out in the blink of an eye as if they were hit by a speeding car. Let them go. Originally, they planned to take Wanda and the others to a safe place first, and then come to help, but when they went out and saw the children who were about to be taken away in the corridor, the influence of Wukong's character came into play again. So I rushed forward without thinking. The heavily armed soldiers there also discovered that there was an accident here, and they cooperated very calmly and well trained to shoot Hawking. Hawking, on the other hand, swung the golden cudgel behind his back and danced it into a circle to directly deflect all the anesthesia needles. Not to mention the anesthesia injection, even if a live bullet was hit on his body, it would only hurt a little, and the skin would not be broken. However, you still need to pay attention to some vital points like your eyes, ears, mouth and nose. Although he was partly influenced by Wukong's character at this time, he was still mainly based on his own character and would not be as reckless as Wukong. Replace with live ammunition. Seeing how powerful Hawking was, the soldiers immediately replaced the tranquilizer bombs with more powerful live ammunition. It's just that they far underestimated Hawking's speed, because as soon as he finished speaking, Hawking was already close to them. Hit, hit, hit. The wish-fulfilling stick was swung out repeatedly without any moves. With the power and speed of the crushing level, several soldiers were eliminated instantly without even having time to react. It's so cool. The three little ones who came out of the room all exclaimed when they saw Hawking killing the soldiers instantly. Even Wanda and Pietro only knew that Hawking was relatively strong, but they didn't know that he was so powerful in combat. Everyone follow me. With Wanda and the rescued children, Hawking began to walk downstairs. Chopping melons and vegetables along the way, he eliminated the soldiers blocking the road. Soon he rescued a dozen students and met Colossus, who was also rescuing people. Hawking, this way. The metal-clad Colossus held a student who was knocked unconscious by a tranquilizer gun, knocked on the hidden secret door on the first floor, and was directing everyone to retreat. When he saw Hawking appearing with a group of students, he immediately waved and shouted. Although the students in the school have their own abilities, and even some students have different abilities, their lethality is not low. But they had no combat training at all. They were just a group of teenage students, the youngest of whom was only 7 or 8 years old. Only Colossus, who is about to graduate and choose to stay and become an X-Men, can barely be considered a warrior. So what they have to do now is to leave through the emergency evacuation channel reserved by the school, instead of everyone working together to drive away the intruders. Where are Professor X and the others? After vigorously kicking away the 2 soldiers blocking the road, Hawking brought Wanda and a dozen other children to Colossus. Normally, even if Magneto doesn't wear a helmet, he will still be controlled in front of Professor X. Out. The professor and the others are out tonight and won't be back until tomorrow. Colossus returned to his normal body and looked at Hawking in surprise as he explained. He only knew from Wanda and Pietro that Hawking was very strong because of his ability to eat, but he didn't know that he was so good at fighting at a young age. Ah! At this time, 2 screams suddenly sounded from the corner of the corridor on the right. I saw a strong man in a vest, with his hands extending sharp metal blades, inserting them deeply into the chests of the 2 soldiers, roaring and pushing them against the wall until the 2 soldiers lost consciousness before retracting the wolf claws. Behind him were also followed by a dozen rescued students. Wolverine Logan. With this obvious feature, Hawking recognized his identity at a glance. What Colossus said next also confirmed his guess. Mr. Logan, what should we do next? Boy, are everyone here now? Wolverine shook the blood off his adamantium claws. Colossus glanced at the juniors who entered the secret passage and quickly replied. Bobby, John and Rugrats aren't here. I'll go find them and you take these kids to a safe place. Wolverine turned around to find the 3 students who were alone, but was stopped by Hawking. Me and you together. It shouldn't be a big problem for Wanda and Pietro to hide in the secret passage with Colossus and the students. He just took this opportunity to eliminate all these intruders with Wolverine and earn some justice points. Son, wait until you become a warrior in a few years. Now, be obedient and join them. Wolverine stopped and looked at Hawking, who was about 11 or 12 years old, and waved back. Apparently he didn't think a kid could be of much help. Crack. The glass at the end of the corridor suddenly shattered, and the searchlight of a combat helicopter shone in, while the machine gun on the fighter jet was also pointed at this place. Oh, shit, come on. Wolverine swore when he saw this, stretched out his adamantium alloy claws, and rushed forward. However, before he was halfway through, the machine gun had already started to rotate. Densely packed bullets were aimed at Wolverine. Even though his body could heal itself and he would not be killed, he was still beaten back and unable to move forward. Chapter 11. Turtle-style Qigong. There was a loud shout, and then a beam of energy shot from behind Wolverine, grazing his beard and directly blowing up the helicopter on the spot. There is no need to wait for the future, I am a qualified warrior now. Putting away his posture, Hawking said to Wolverine, who turned back and glared at him. Colossus and the students who had not yet entered the secret passage were stunned at this time. Hawking's turtle-style qigong reminded them of Cyclops Scott. "Sergeant, how many have you caught?" At the same time, in the brainwave enhancement room on the top floor of the school that was blasted open, William Stryker picked up the helmet of the brainwave enhancement machine and asked the sergeant beside him. There was a hint of embarrassment on the sergeant's face. "There is none at the moment. 2 powerful guys showed up and rescued all the students we just captured. Even one of the fighter jets was damaged. First dismantle these and transport them back to the base. Others will stay and capture as many mutants as possible to test the effectiveness of the machine." Stryker suddenly frowned. He didn't expect to take down Professor. Originally he planned to occupy the entire school directly, but now to be on the safe side he decided to leave with the machine himself. With Professor. Yes, Colonel. So these well-trained professional soldiers quickly dismantled the main mechanical parts of the brainwave enhancement machine, and then escorted them with Colonel Stryker to the transport plane parked outside. The remaining sergeant continued to command the remaining soldiers to fight. But it didn't take long for his expression to change, because all that came from his walkie-talkie were the screams of his men. "Don't move, put your hands up." In the lobby on the second floor of the school, the 3 naughty boys managed to escape several searching soldiers, but were blocked by a large wave of soldiers. Seeing a dozen submachine guns pointed at them, they were immediately too frightened to move. They have not yet undergone combat training and have a visceral fear of firearms, and they dare not use their abilities to resist. Seeing that the 3 of them were about to be captured by these soldiers with tranquilizer guns, 2 loud shouts suddenly came from above their heads. "Go to hell, take my stick." It was Wolverine and Hawking who discovered the situation here and swooped down from the 3rd-floor corridor. Inserting the heart, cutting the neck, and using the bodies of the killed soldiers to block bullets, Wolverine had killed 6 soldiers in just a few seconds, but when he rushed towards the 7th, he found that there were no soldiers left standing. It turned out that the remaining 11 soldiers had all been knocked down by Hawking. "Well done, little monkey." Reaching out to push the corpse away from the wolf's paws, Wolverine couldn't help but praise Hawking again. Along the way, they encountered several groups of invading soldiers, and Hawking's performance really impressed him. Not only the powerful energy attack at the beginning, but later Hawking also showed stronger fighting ability and physical fitness than him, as well as a strong heart that a warrior should have. The key point is that Hawking was only 12 years old. "Logan, I told you, don't call me little monkey." Hawking stuck the wishful stick on his back and rolled his eyes. He knew that Wolverine didn't mean to mock him when he called him little monkey, because his 12-year-old body and the tail behind his butt really fit the title of little monkey. It's just that he doesn't want to use little monkey as his code name when he is introduced in the future. This is Wolverine, this is Cyclops, this is Storm, and this is little monkey. It's so weak, isn't it? But to be honest, fighting Wolverine along the way, he also saw how powerful Wolverine was. Wolverine's strength is not his fighting ability. His fighting ability is not bad, even far superior to most people, but it is not the best. What makes him powerful is his near-immortal self-healing body, coupled with the almost indestructible adamant metal skeleton and wolf claws. Unless he is defeated by giants like Magneto and Professor X, ordinary people can't really defeat him. Of course, this is not the most critical thing. The most critical thing is his extremely strong heart and nearly 200 years of combat experience. Combat experience is different from fighting skills. Rich combat experience allows him to always use all the advantages of himself and the surrounding environment to defeat opponents more powerful than himself. It's like Brother Long in the furniture store. "What would I call you, Gorilla, or Donkey Kong?" Wolverine joked. Hawking always acted like a little adult, and he couldn't help but want to tease him. "Okay, whatever you want." After spreading his hands, Hawking knew that it was useless to talk. One day he would transform into a giant ape form and let Wolverine know how incompatible the little monkey was with him. Logan. Seeing Logan appear, the little naughty pounced on him. Logan was her best friend. It was Logan who helped her when she was most lonely and helpless. "Okay, it's not safe yet, follow me and the little monkey, we will take you to the secret passage." After letting go of the little naughty boy, before Logan could finish his words, the large glass in the lobby on the 2nd floor was suddenly blown to pieces, and 3 combat helicopters had already appeared there. "Little monkey, Logan immediately looked at Hawking. Along the way, Hawking's energy column with his bare hands killed 4 more combat helicopters. But this time Hawking did not use turtle-style qigong, but pulled out the Rui stick from behind. The wishful stick has grown longer. Under Hawking's order, the wishful stick quickly lengthened and was directly inserted into the combat helicopter in the middle outside. Aha! The muscles all over his body exploded, and Hawking vigorously swung the lengthened golden cudgel left and right. In the round eyes of the 3 naughty people behind, the helicopter in the middle was actually controlled by Hawking's powerful force, and it hit the helicopters on both sides heavily. Boom, boom, boom. All 3 combat helicopters exploded and fell. Although the Turtle School Qigong is powerful, it consumes too much qi in the body. Even the 13-year-old Sun Wukong cannot use it all the time. Retreat, all retreat. The sergeant who had already arrived on the lawn outside the school heard that more than a dozen elite soldiers had died and 3 combat helicopters were destroyed. He gritted his teeth and gave the final retreat order. There are currently less than 10 people and 2 combat helicopters left in this operation. If they don't retreat, the entire army will be annihilated. They're retreating. After sending the 3 Rugrats into the secret passage on the first floor, Hawking and Wolverine were preparing to continue hunting the invading soldiers, but found that the other party was no longer attacking, but was quickly retreating. The 2 chased them downstairs, where the only 2 remaining helicopters had already taken off. Let these fools run away. Wolverine lit the cigar and took a puff, saying with some regret, "It's not that easy to run away." Hawking took a stance and struck another blow of turtle-style qigong, blasting one of the combat helicopters. These are rare values of justice, how can you let them go? However, after finishing this shot, he clearly felt that his body could no longer condense the qigong of the second shot of the turtle school. He looked around and quickly fixed his gaze on a decorative stone pillar on the left side of the school castle. He ran over and slashed the stone pillar up and down with his knife, then quickly removed it. Then he aimed at the last combat helicopter, which had almost turned into a small black dot, and threw it out with all his strength with a loud shout. I saw the 4-meter-long and half-meter-thick stone pillar, driven by Hawking with all his strength, like an exploding missile, flying straight towards the almost invisible little black dot. Boom! The last combat helicopter also turned into a ball of beautiful sparks in the sky. 13-year-old Wukong has already climbed the Kalen Tower and defeated Dao Baibai. Similar to Dao Baibai's ability to throw stone pillars with one hand, Hawking, who has loaded the Wukong template, can naturally do it easily. If he wanted to, he could catch up with the stone pillar in one leap and fly to a far distance on the stone pillar. Previously in Sokovia, if he hadn't been afraid of becoming the focus of missiles from both sides in the air, he could have used this method to fly out of the city quickly from the beginning. I take back what I said at the beginning, you are indeed a very qualified warrior. Looking at the last combat helicopter exploding in the air, Wolverine turned to look at Hawking and raised the steel claw on the far right of his right hand. Hawking, on the other hand, stretched out his hand to Wolverine. What? Wolverine didn't understand what Hawking meant. Cigarette. Hawking pointed to the cigar in Wolverine's hand. Wolverine quickly waved his hand. No, this is not suitable for you. You have to wait a few more years. However, as soon as the figure flashed, the cigar box and lighter in his pocket had fallen into Hawking's hands. In terms of speed, he can't compare to Hawking in his current state. He took out a cigar from the box, lit it, and held it in his mouth with a serious look. I definitely don't smoke. At this time, it's just to tease Wolverine, who keeps giving himself random nicknames. Oh God, the professor would kill me if he knew. Wolverine couldn't help but twitching at the corners of his eyes when he saw Hawking holding a cigar in his mouth. Professor, he said that the next time he committed another crime, he would change his mind into a 6-year-old girl and let Chin braid his hair. If it was known that he was giving cigarettes to school students, he would be doomed. Don't worry, if the professor finds me smoking or drinking, I will say it was Luo Genzin who taught me. Hawking waved a lit cigar in front of Wolverine's face. Okay, I won't call you little monkey anymore, this matter must be kept secret. Logan covered his forehead. After making a joke, Hawking stopped chatting with Wolverine and asked about business. Logan, Professor, where were they tonight? I'm not sure. I just arrived at school in the evening. Professor Charles said he wanted to visit old friends. Chin and the others went to Boston. It seemed to be related to a mutant attacking the president. Because of Hawking's strength and various mature performances, Wolverine no longer regards him as an ordinary child. After hearing Logan's words, Hawking's pupils suddenly shrank. "No, Logan, do you know where the professor's brainwave enhancement room is?" "Certainly." Logan nodded. "School brainwave enhancement room. It's indeed that, Colonel Stryker." Hawking looked at the forcibly destroyed entrance and the disappeared brainwave enhancement machine, and he had completely confirmed who assigned those who attacked the mutant school this time. Colonel Stryker, full name William Stryker. Because his son was a mutant and could not control his abilities and accidentally killed his wife, he vowed to destroy all mutants in the world. He captured mutants everywhere and conducted experiments in an attempt to create the most powerful weapon to kill all mutants. This gave birth to Wolverine, who possesses adamantium alloy. Now he uses his son's brain fluid to control Nightcrawler, who can teleport, to assassinate the president, thereby luring Professor. Finally, he wanted to use his son's Master of Illusion ability to control Professor X through the brainwave enhancement machine to kill all mutants in the world. I don't know if the brainwave enhancement machine has been taken away. After thinking about it, Hawking sighed. Because he remembered that at the beginning, he saw a transport plane parked on the lawn outside the school, but then it disappeared. So there is a high probability that Stryker has obtained the brainwave enhancement machine. These guys are arresting students and stealing brainwave enhancement machines. What is their purpose? Wolverine looked at the brainwave enhancement machine that disappeared in front of him, with a puzzled look on his face. This kind of brain-using thing is obviously not suitable for him. The time is almost up. Hawking, who was thinking about what to do next, saw the countdown to the end of loading of the protagonist template that popped up on the panel, and immediately said to Wolverine, "Go to the secret passage to find Peter and ask him to use the school's communication facilities to try to contact the professor and all the teachers. My abilities have reached the limit and I need to take a rest." Before he finished speaking, he rolled his eyes and fainted. Little monkey. Seeing Hawking suddenly fainting, Wolverine was also shocked and hurriedly went up to hug him. He checked and found that he had just fainted, and he was relieved. What a strange ability. Watching Hawking's hair recover, the stick behind him disappear, and his clothes turn into normal clothes, Wolverine carried Hawking to the secret passage where Peter and the others had just left. Before many mutants fully grew up, their bodies couldn't bear the coma after using their abilities for a long time. He thought the same was true for Hawking. Drowsy, groggy, brother, the familiar call made Hawking gradually open his eyes. When Wanda and Pietro saw Hawking waking up, they immediately cried and threw themselves on him. Born in war-torn Sokovia, even though they were much stronger than other children of the same age, they were still frightened when they saw Wolverine coming back with the unconscious Hawking in his arms. "Okay, stop crying, I'm fine." Hawking sat up and looked at the surrounding environment while comforting the two brothers and sisters. A large and luxurious villa, where the school's mutant children are all, should be a temporary shelter set up by Professor X outside the school just in case. "You were unconscious for an hour, but you seem to be fine." Realizing that Hawking had woken up here, Wolverine also came over carrying a bottle of beer. And Hawking was moved when he heard Wolverine's words. "It only takes an hour." Sure enough, the improvement of the main body's strength can greatly reduce the side effects of loading the protagonist template. When the template was loaded for the first time, Hawking was in a coma for a whole day, and he was very weak when he woke up. He has only been in coma for an hour now. When he woke up, his body was basically normal. There was no weakness and he was in his usual normal state. I believe that if I practice for a while, loading the template will probably have no side effects. Have you contacted the professor? No, I only contacted Chin and Aurora. They are rushing back from Boston and they probably won't arrive until tomorrow. Wolverine handed the beer in his hand to Bobby next to him. Bobby blew into the mouth of the bottle, and a bottle of cold beer came out immediately. If Professor X was not contacted, it was basically certain that he had been captured by Stryker. The power of Professor. Therefore, as long as you are not controlled by his mind at close range and remotely controlled mechanical sneak attacks, it is not difficult to deal with Professor X. This is why Professor X always takes a Scot with him when he goes out, because he needs someone to protect him. Stryker took advantage of this and suddenly closed the room when Professor Okay, let's wait until the teachers come back. Hawking didn't say anything about Stryker's plan because it wasn't his place to say it. How could he, a kid who had just come from Sokovia to go to school, know so much about mutants? He couldn't explain it afterwards. Even asking Wolverine to take him to check out the brainwave enhancement machine before was not something he should have done. It was just that Wolverine was more nervous and it was fine. Professor X would have suspected him a long time ago. And it's useless to say it now. Stryker's base is far away by a large lake in Canada. Without the school's X-fighter, he and Wolverine can't fly there. Of course, he can't completely ignore it. If Stryker succeeds and kills all the mutants on the Earth, little Pietro will not be spared. His original plan of eating and drinking in the mutant school to gain justice will also go bankrupt. Or in the end, Magneto seizes the opportunity, changes his goal, and kills all normal humans on the Earth. That would be even worse, because he will also die. Hey, he doesn't seem to be a normal human now, he is a Saiyan. But it's hard to say this. It was not his style to leave his fate to others. Boy Gang will continue to contact the professor. I will keep vigil at night. Just have a good rest. Wolverine patted Hawking on the shoulder and told him not to worry too much. In his eyes, no matter how powerful and mature Hawking is, he is still a child, and there are some things that children should not be responsible for. However, Hawking's stomach made several, croaking, sounds at this time. Is there anything to eat here? I need to fill my stomach. The much food eaten at night had been almost consumed in the 1 hour of fighting. Wolverine smiled when he saw this. Follow me, there's everything in the basement. This is an emergency shelter prepared by Professor. After comforting Wanda and Pietro, Hawking followed Wolverine to the basement of the villa. At this time, I want to sing a song about heaven. Looking at the boxes and boxes of chocolates, sausages, bread, drinks and other miscellaneous food, Hawking's eyes suddenly lit up. His body has long been hungry and thirsty, and it needs these high sugar, high fat and high energy things to replenish it. Oh, hell, I finally know who the edible Kid Yug was talking about. Wolverine's half-drunk beer froze in the air as he watched the boxes of food disappear. In the afternoon of the next day, a stealth fighter landed steadily on the lawn behind the villa. Chin, you are much later than the agreed time. I was worried that you might not get into any trouble. Seeing the Phoenix Girl coming out of the plane, Logan stepped forward and gave her a hug. Behind Phoenix Girl, Storm Girl was carrying a mutant who looked like a legendary demon. She pointed to the door cabin of the plane and explained. Something unexpected happened halfway through, and I met 2 unexpected people. Wolverine turned around and saw an old man wearing a special helmet and a female mutant with blue skin walking out. Friends, long time no see. The old man raised his hand and said hello with a smile. Wolverine's expression immediately became fierce, and his wolf claws instantly stretched out. The visitors were none other than Magneto and Mystique, who had had a fierce life and death battle at the Statue of Liberty 2 years ago. In that battle, the little naughty boy was almost killed by Magneto. Logan, they are not enemies now. Upon seeing this, Phoenix Girl quickly stopped Wolverine and explained patiently. It turns out that Magneto was rescued from prison by Mystique after Stryker took away Professor X, and then took the initiative to contact the X-Men to seek cooperation, saying that they would rescue Professor X and save all mutants together. Magneto's purpose is not only to save mutants, but also to kill all humans. Standing at the second-floor window and watching everything, Hawking shook his head while chewing on a large Virginia sausage. He will definitely go to Canada to rescue Professor X. Whether it is saving mutants or humans, he will have a lot of justice points in his account no matter which one. Maybe the progress bar will be filled directly to unlock the second protagonist template. Again, he didn't trust leaving his fate in anyone's hands. The operation in the movie was indeed successful, but this is not a movie, and it is most likely not a universe. The same event may have different results, and who can say for sure? His appearance itself has already produced a butterfly effect, and everything in the future will inevitably change dramatically. The plots he knows in his mind can only be used as a reference and must not be regarded as a creed. Otherwise, you might get tricked to death at some point. Wanda, Pietro, you guys stay here and watch TV with everyone. I'll go down. Seeing Magneto and others entering the villa together, Hawking touched Wanda and Pietro's heads, said a few words and then walked up the stairs to the living room on the first floor. No news from the professor yet. Kid, don't worry, Professor, he is fine and will be back soon, and we will be able to go back to school soon. When Storm saw Hawking coming downstairs to ask for news about Professor X, she immediately leaned over and comforted him like a child. She knew that Hawking was a child that the professor had just brought to school, and she had met him yesterday. Now that the school has become like this, Hawking, a child who has just entered the school, must be very scared, and the only familiar Professor X is not here. Logan behind him showed a strange expression when he saw this. This scene made him feel very inconsistent. Hawking is indeed a child, but after yesterday's battle, he really can't completely treat him as a child. It's really exciting. Subconsciously glancing at the abyss in front of him, Hawking was instantly attracted. The body of 11 or 12 years old has already entered puberty, and coupled with the soul of an adult in the previous life, it is inevitable that there will be some reaction to the beautiful scenery so close at hand. Maybe this is the benefit of being reborn as a child. Everything will get better. Finally, Storm touched Hawking's head and stood up. In her opinion, what kind of bad thoughts could a child have? She didn't think too much about it. At this time, Hawking also reacted, coughed a little awkwardly, and then said, Pio has not been able to contact the professor. The target of yesterday's wave of people was mainly the brainwave enhancement machine. According to what Logan and I said about the professor's ability and the role of the brainwave enhancement machine, I suspect those people have captured the professor and want to do something with him and the brainwave enhancement machine. Quote, everyone was shocked when they heard Hawking's analysis that was suddenly so close to the truth. At this time, Logan also walked up to Hawking and introduced. Don't underestimate Hawking. He killed most of the invading soldiers yesterday. Even 10 combat helicopters were destroyed. Without his help and just relying on me, it would be really troublesome. So I suggest that you bring him with you to all subsequent meetings and actions. Quote, Hawking had talked to him in the morning, asked for a lot of information, and made his own guesses and judgments, most of which matched the intelligence brought by Magneto. Coupled with yesterday's fight side by side, he really felt that he could take Hawking with him. Of course, it was certainly not because Hawking threatened to tell the professor about the two smoking and drinking together last night that he agreed to help. What an extraordinary elite. After hearing Wolverine's words, Magneto looked at Hawking with admiration in his eyes, and wished he could immediately recruit him into his brotherhood of mutants and train him. With such strength and wisdom at a young age, he will definitely be an elite among the elite when he grows up. If he can be won over, he will be one of his generals. But he's still a kid. The two female teachers, Storm and Chin, obviously did not agree with letting Hawking, a child, participate in the next dangerous action, even though Hawking had powerful abilities. In their eyes, children are still children no matter how capable they are, and they should not be allowed to go to the battlefield. He is not an ordinary child, but a warrior. In my opinion, he is more suitable for the next action than you, the greenhouse flowers cultivated by Charles. Magneto stepped forward and said. On the one hand, he said this to increase Hawking's good impression of him. What a strong child lacks most is a sense of identity. As long as he feels that you identify with him, he will involuntarily lean towards you. On the other hand, he did think so. Except for Wolverine, the other X-Men were all baby dolls in his eyes. Although their abilities were well developed under the guidance of Charles, they were not ruthless enough. There is room for action, even if the enemy can be wounded but not killed, it is too naive, just like Charles. If Charles could be as cruel as him and kill him after catching him, the Brotherhood of Mutants would be gone long ago. Flowers in the greenhouse. I don't know who lost the last battle on Liberty Island and was sent to prison until now. Wolverine raised his right hand and extended the metal claw in the middle towards Magneto, as if giving a middle finger. Magneto just smiled when he saw this. You still have the same short memory. Because of the adamantium alloy in his body, Wolverine is defeated by his abilities. He can make Wolverine's life worse than death at any time if he wants to. Mystique on the side stepped forward and touched Wolverine's chin, leaned on Magneto and mocked. You won't be so lucky every time. Well, I think now is not the time to settle old scores, but to think about how to rescue the professor, isn't it? Seeing that the smell of gunpowder was beginning to get stronger, Hawking quickly stepped forward to smooth things over. After hearing what one of Hawking's children said, it was really hard for both parties to continue arguing. That makes sense. For the safety of Charles and the entire mutant population, we really need to work together this time. Magneto nodded. Wolverine also put away his wolf claws. Hawking stepped forward and held Storm with one hand and Phoenix with the other and said, "Two teachers, I know you are doing it for my own good, but the current situation is special. For the sake of the professor, the school, and the entire mutant population, including my sister and brother, I must join. And please rest assured, I grew up in a war-torn country like Sokovia. I am very good at fighting and protecting myself. If there is really danger, I will protect myself." Quote. Looking at Hawking's firm eyes, Storm and Phoenix looked at each other, and finally nodded helplessly. They could only sigh inwardly, "What a good child. Remember, that old man over there is a bad guy, so be sure to listen less to what he says." Storm squatted down and leaned against Hawking's ear, pointing at Magneto and whispering. She was afraid that Hawking was still young and would be beguiled by Magneto's crooked theories. "Don't worry, I won't be fooled by that old man so easily." Hawking smiled and winked. So everyone came to the conference room that Colossus had prepared long ago and began to discuss the next action plan. As soon as the meeting began, Magneto told all the information he knew. "That's what happened. The information I have now is that Stryker has once again established a new brainwave enhancement room in his base. This time, he took away the brainwave enhancement host in order to completely improve it. If he really controls Charles to use the brainwave enhancement machine to kill all mutants, then all of you will die except me. It's just that I can't determine the specific location of Stryker's experimental base yet." Quote. Finally, Magneto nodded the helmet on his head. His helmet can block Professor X's mental intrusion, and it can also block mental attacks. The meaning to be expressed is also obvious. Even in the worst possible outcome, nothing will happen to him, so the one who is more anxious should be the X-Men. He is a kind-hearted friend who came to help, so you must trust him. But one of you should know. Professor has tried, but I still can't restore my memory. Wolverine frowned. According to Magneto, he was captured by Stryker and transformed in that experimental base, but he has lost those memories. "Oh, you think everything has to do with you?" Magneto smiled mockingly at Wolverine. "The person the old gentleman is talking about should be him." At this time, Hawking opened his mouth and pointed at Nightcrawler. Since he was controlled by Stryker and attacked the president, there is a high probability that he has been to the experimental base. As long as Professor Chin uses telepathy to read his memory, he may be able to find clues about the base. Only by showing his wisdom to everyone appropriately can he have a certain say in the next actions, otherwise everyone will still treat him as a child. "Yes, it seems that besides Charles, you have some smart guys here." Magneto looked at Hawking with even more admiration. The Phoenix girl didn't waste any time. She immediately stood up and came to Nightwalker. After comforting him, she began to concentrate on using telepathy on him. Soon, she found the specific location of Stryker's experimental base from Nightcrawler's blocked memory. "It's at Winkle Industrial Park in the Canadian Rockies." "It's impossible. I just came back from there. It was abandoned and there was nothing there except a few wolves." Wolverine had a look of disbelief on his face. Phoenix Girl explained. "Logan, the base is not on the ground, but built underground, in the dam of Lake Arklay. After determining the location of the base, the next step is to send out personnel." The original plan was for Magneto, Mystique, Wolverine, Storm, Phoenix, Nightcrawler and Hawking, with Colossus staying to take care of the children. But at the end, Hawking raised objections. "My suggestion is to let Professor Chin stay to protect the students, while Peter and us go to rescue the professor." He didn't want Phoenix Girl to follow him to the base. If he was stimulated and broke through the mental barrier that Professor X had placed in his brain, it would become a major natural disaster. As a fifth-level mutant, Chin possesses the Phoenix Force of the three ancient powers. When she explodes with all her strength, she will not be weaker than Wanda, who has the power of chaos to kill through the multiverse. It was just because he was unable to control his abilities when he was a child that he lost control of his car and killed his mother, causing his personality to split. One is a kind-hearted character now, and the other is a dark personality full of desire and destruction. In order to prevent Phoenix Girl from losing control, Professor X used his own psychic energy to build a barrier in her brain, temporarily restraining that dark personality. Therefore, the level 5 Phoenix Girl's current ability strength is at the level of level 3. If she is not stimulated, in the future the Phoenix Girl's kind personality will slowly develop and fully control the Phoenix power, and she will eventually be able to completely eliminate the dark personality. Pio has just started training and hasn't been able to cooperate well yet. He is much worse than Chin. Storm frowned and objected. Hawking explained with a serious face. It is precisely because of this that I suggested that teacher you can stay, because the safety of the students here is also very important. The fighting at the school last night must have alerted the nearby police, and it is estimated that it has been blocked by a large number of police and personnel from relevant government departments. Among them may be Stryker's men. If this shelter is discovered, it will be difficult to ensure the safety of the students. Professor Chin has the same mind control ability as Professor Charles. He can avoid some police inquiries and better protect the safety of students. Quote, I think what little Mr. Hawking said makes sense. Magneto was the first to agree when he heard this. He didn't care about the safety of the school students. He felt that with one missing piano, his plans would be less hindered. As for Peter, who can be made of steel, he is restrained by his ability just like Logan, so there is no need to worry at all. What the little monkey said makes sense. For the safety of the students, Chin, just stay. Wolverine also agrees with Hawking's point of view, because he likes Chin and is worried that Chin will not be injured during this mission. Considering that what Hawking said did make sense, Storm finally agreed. Logan, promise me you will rescue Scott. Seeing that everyone agreed, Phoenix Girl had no choice but to nod, but she also made an explanation to Wolverine. Professor X was kidnapped by Stryker, and Cyclops, who was responsible for protecting Professor. Stryker just got the mainframe of the brainwave enhancement machine last night, and it will take some time for him to transport it to the base for assembly and debugging. Let's take a good rest first to recharge our spirits, and then set off at night to launch an attack in the early morning when the opponent is most slack. Quote, after the personnel for the operation were decided, Magneto also determined the time for the operation. Everyone didn't sleep well last night, especially Magneto who escaped from prison and Storm who went to Boston to find Nightcrawler. They didn't sleep at all, so the most important thing now is to adjust their state before setting off. Hawking has no objection to this. His protagonist template has not yet finished cooling down and it needs time. In the basement of the villa, after the meeting, Hawking came straight over. In addition to a lot of food that can be stored for a long time, there are also many daily necessities here. Found it. After some searching, he finally found what he needed from a box, sunglasses. It's a pity that they are all children's versions. He picked a Mickey Mouse-shaped one and stuffed it into his pocket before leaving the basement. Why look for sunglasses? Because tonight happens to be the full moon day of the month. If he looks directly at the moon without wearing sunglasses, he will turn into a cruel and irrational giant ape. Of course, this is also his biggest trump card for daring to participate in this operation. If you really encounter a crisis that cannot be solved by loading the protagonist template, or even threatens your own life, then you can transform into the form of a giant ape to save your life. The combat effectiveness of the giant ape form is 10 times higher than that of the normal form. As for the others, I'm sorry, I can only let them wish for themselves. Logan, I'm sorry, I'm very nice and charming, but I choose Scott, so don't do this again. As soon as he walked out of the basement, Hawking happened to catch Wolverine and Phoenix kissing passionately. After the passionate kiss, Hawking heard Phoenix's decision to reject Wolverine and choose Cyclops. Both Wolverine and Cyclops liked Phoenix Girl, but compared to the wild Wolverine, Phoenix Girl finally chose Cyclops, who had been with him day and night for more than 10 years. It seems you've fallen out of love, would you like one? Hawking pulled a cigar from the box in his pocket and handed it to Wolverine. Thank you, maybe Scott is more suitable for her than me. Wolverine comforted himself. He is a lone wolf who has lost his memory and has been wandering around in search of himself. Even if he occasionally returns here, it is only a temporary stop. Hey, why does your cigar box look so familiar? Yeah, I picked it up from the ground. Picked it up. I dropped it while drinking yesterday. Oh, that's mine now. That's my last box, give it back to me. Logan, don't be so rude. Isn't it too embarrassing for you, an adult, to snatch things from a child? Okay, I'll give you everything. You are still a child. This is not suitable for you. I will keep it all and give it to you when you really need it. Ha ha ha, just kidding you, actually I don't smoke. Because the protagonist template was not loaded, although Hawking's strength was beyond that of ordinary people, it was still far behind Wolverine, and he was still taken away from the cigar box in the end. However, his last words also made Logan depressed for a while. He thought too much for a long time. After playing with Wolverine for a while and playing Neo 13 for a while, seeing that he was in a better mood, Hawking turned and went to the second floor to accompany Wanda and Pietro. However, as soon as he reached the stairs, he was blocked by Magneto and Mystique. Kid, do you know you have great potential? You know, I have always felt that I will definitely become a great person in the future. Hawking smiled, strong and self-aware. Even if he only has the current Saiyan bloodline and is developed in the future, he will definitely have a place in the Marvel Universe, not to mention he has more than one protagonist template. Very good, I like your confidence, but it's too wasteful to be here. Follow me, I can better develop your potential and let you give full play to your abilities. Magneto began to export his idea of mutant supremacy to Hawking, looking forward to a bright future, and wanted him to join the Brotherhood of Mutants. Well, the teachers all told me that you were a bad guy, but I quite agree with some of your views. However, at present, I still feel that the school for gifted youngsters is more suitable for my growth. Your place is too poor, and those who run around are hunted down. Maybe when I grow up, I'll consider it. Quote, waiting patiently for Magneto to finish, Hawking gave his own answer, and he rejected Magneto. What he said is true. Lao Wan is a nice person, but he is not as rich as Professor Won't Join. He didn't say anything to death, which gave Magneto a little hope that at least the other side wouldn't kill him if they fought in the future. It doesn't matter. As long as you figure it out, you are welcome to come to me at any time. Magneto was not too surprised by Hawking's answer and still kept smiling. It is normal that students who have been brainwashed by Charles do not recognize reality and the hopelessness of human beings so quickly. This beautiful young lady, can you give me a moment? Hawking turned to look at Mystique, who had blue skin all over her body. To be honest, Mystique's figure is really great, but her blue skin is a little hard to accept. However, its ability to take on the appearance of any person, including irises, fingerprints, skin texture, voice and gender, can completely make up for this shortcoming. With Mystique, you basically own the whole world, and there will never be a lack of freshness to satisfy any imagination you have. That is, he has been thinking about a question. Does Mystique's blue skin state count as wearing clothes? If it doesn't count, wouldn't it be the case every day? This little guy is quite realistic and quite naughty. After Hawking walked up to the second floor, Mystique licked her lips and commented. Magneto nodded. It doesn't matter. The more he has a character like this and the longer he stays here, he will join us sooner or later. Although they didn't get along for long, he was able to see from Hawking's words and actions that he was not a lonely person, nor was he an idealist like Charles. I hope so. I don't hate this sweet-mouthed little guy. Mystique shrugged, activated her ability, and her body instantly changed, transforming into Jean Grey wearing a vest. I'm going to tease that silly wolf. Don't overdo it. We'll need them until the plan is complete. Magneto explained with a smile. Don't believe anything Magneto says. The little naughty boy was almost killed by him last time. As soon as they reached the second floor, Storm suddenly appeared. She was always wary of Magneto, but she didn't worry that Magneto and the two were wandering around the villa and had been monitoring the two of them intentionally or unintentionally. Sure enough, she just noticed Magneto stopping little Hawking and didn't know what he said. I know he wants me to join his fraternity, and I've said no. Hawking replied without concealment. But Teacher Aurora, I think we should be careful about Magneto when we go to rescue the professor. If that striker can control the professor to eliminate all mutants in the world, Magneto may not be able to take the opportunity to let the professor eliminate all humans. Quote. Hearing Hawking's reminder, Storm's pupils suddenly shrank. Yes, why didn't she think of this problem? If it were Magneto, it would really be possible for him to do such a thing. Thank you, Hawking, this is so important, I will pay attention to it. Of course, this is just a guess, maybe he's not that bad. Hawking smiled and shrugged. Revealing Magneto's plan to Storm in advance was also to make them wary, otherwise they wouldn't even know they were being tricked. It is also to re-establish his character as a wise man and make up for some of the negative effects of being a child. It doesn't matter whether he is really a wise man or not. What is important is to make everyone feel that he is, so that everyone will take his opinions seriously and trust him more. He's just so bad, it seems like we need to watch him more closely when the time comes. Storm was not sure at first, but after hearing what Hawking said, the more she thought about it, the more she felt that the other party would definitely do that, otherwise she would not be so active in seeking cooperation with them. By the way, there is one more important thing. Seeing Storm about to leave to inform the others, Hawking stopped her again. What's important? Storm obviously paid a lot of attention this time. Hawking explained, my ability is that after an explosion, I can greatly improve my physical fitness and launch some energy attacks. I should have said this just after the meeting. Yes, I did. Storm nodded. We all have to go to the base to rescue the professor together at night. We must know each other's abilities in order to cooperate well. Because Magneto was there at the time, I didn't finish what I said, that is, after I see the moon on a full moon night, my strength will increase significantly, but with my current control, I will lose my mind by then. So if that time comes tonight, remember to cut off my tail so that I can recover. Quote. Hawking talked about his special situation in advance. In fact, he originally considered hiding it, because in case he didn't need it, he could keep this trump card and not let anyone know about it. But after thinking about it, it seemed unnecessary. The giant ape form without reason will only lead him to the point where he is feared and hated by everyone like the Hulk. What if because no one knows that cutting off his tail can make him return to normal, he will be in the form of a giant ape for a night, and the consequences will be absolutely disastrous. It is probably more destructive than the Hulk who lost his mind under Wanda's control. At least the Hulk doesn't spit out energy cannons. This result was not what he wanted. There is such a thing. This is the first time Storm has heard of Hawking's situation. But out of trust in Hawking, she still wrote it down carefully and planned to tell Wolverine, Colossus and Nightcrawler together later. At 11 o'clock in the evening, a fighter plane slowly rose from the villa lawn, then quickly became invisible and disappeared. Professor Chin, what are Hawking and the others going to do? Wanda was lying on the window of the room on the second floor, looking at the disappearing plane above, and turned to ask the Phoenix Girl next to her. Phoenix Girl touched Wanda's head. Hawking and the teachers went to fight the bad guys and will be back soon. When I grow up, I want Hawking to fight bad guys together. Wanda waved her hand. She wasn't keen on fighting bad guys, but she wanted to be with Hawking. Phoenix Girl smiled and knelt down. Then you have to work hard. I heard that your ability is to control the movement of objects, and so do I. But now I can only move a small cup. Wanda's hands lit up red, and the cup on the table next to her slowly rose and fell into her hands. Upon seeing this, Phoenix Girl comforted her. Not everyone is as talented as Hawking. We can train slowly, and in the future you can become an X-Men like him to help those in need. If Hawking heard these words here at this time, he would definitely complain fiercely. A Phoenix Power owner and a Chaos Power owner are actually talking about talent here. Whose talent can match the two of them? I will definitely train well. Wanda nodded vigorously, then looked at the window again, praying secretly in her heart. Brother Hawking, you must come back safely. She turned around and looked at her other brother Pietro. The guy was lying on the bed with his arms stretched out, sleeping soundly. We are all brothers, why is there such a big gap? In order to protect them, Brother Hawking had gone with the teachers to fight against the bad guys. Brother Pietro also snatched her favorite pudding during dinner at night. On the other side, Hawking, who didn't know that little Wanda was worried about him, was being helped by Storm to put on the smaller X suit on the plane. Professor Aurora, actually I don't think I need to wear this. This suit is made of special materials. I just modified it in the afternoon. It can effectively resist some physical and energy damage and protect your safety. You must wear it. Storm explained with a serious look on her face. Okay. Hawking wants to tell Storm that as soon as he transforms, the clothes on his body will automatically be transformed into the Kame Senryu martial arts uniform, and it will be useless even if he wears it. But after thinking about it, it seemed good to have the protection of this X-suit after the transformation, so I gave up in the end. Teacher Aurora, I can just wear it myself. This battle suit is not ordinary clothes. It is not easy to put on at first. I will help you put it on. You can watch it and you will know how to put it on next time. Storm ignored Hawking's protests. Hawking had no choice but to secretly lament that he was not growing fast enough. In his previous life, he was of the late-growing type, probably because he had been living in a boarding house with no one to care about him and his living conditions were not good and his nutrition could not keep up, so he grew relatively late and did not look tall when he was 11 or 12 years old. Unlike later children, nutrition can keep up, and many 11 or 12-year-olds look like little adults. In addition, I don't know if it is because he has merged into Son Goku's Saiyan blood, but his symptoms are even more obvious. With the tail behind his butt, it gives people a sense of harmlessness. Wolverine, who was smoking a cigar over there, was stunned when he saw Hawking, and the corner of his mouth was harder than AK. Logan, don't smoke on the plane, don't you see there is a child like me here? But soon he was criticized by Hawking. And Storm also cast a stern look at Wolverine. Yeah, you're still a kid. Wolverine stopped laughing immediately and had no choice but to put out the cigar in his palm. 3 hours later, the fighter jet flew from New York to Lake Eau Claire in Canada. Turning on the fighter's stealth device and slowly parking it in a patch of snow outside the dam, everyone began to discuss how to enter the base. There is only one Yihong channel in the entire dam that can be entered, but the trouble is that as long as we show up, Stryker can open the gate, and we will all be drowned by then. Storm explained after turning on the virtual simulation device on the plane and showing the structural diagram of the dam. Kurt, can you take us in? No, unless it's a place I've been to, or a place I can see. I can't move there, I'll get stuck in the wall. Nightcrawler shook his head like a rattle. At this time Wolverine stood up. I'll go, Stryker won't let me die. Wolverine, no matter who goes, the purpose is to enter the control room, find and know how to operate the device that closes the spillway. What are you going to do? Are you using steel claws? Magneto said with a little sarcasm. Wolverine stared. At least I'm adventurous, but I don't want to take any chances. Magneto looked at Mystique, who had transformed into Wolverine. This transformation ability is really useful. Hawking looked at Mystique, who looked exactly like Wolverine, and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. If she didn't want to completely change the status of mutants like Magneto, Mystique would actually be the mutant who least has to worry about living in the human world. As long as she doesn't cause trouble and no one can find and catch her, she can live well. Everyone is well aware of Mystique's infiltration ability, so Magneto's proposal to let Mystique transform into Wolverine and enter the base was naturally approved. After waiting quietly in the fighter plane for about 20 minutes, Mystique's relaxed voice came from the communicator. The device has been turned off, you can come in. The rear compartment door of the fighter plane opened, and Hawking silently took out his Mickey Mouse children's sunglasses, put them on, and ran with everyone to the spillway of the dam. Looking at the round moon hanging above his head, he couldn't help but murmur to himself. I hope I don't have to turn into a giant ape. A weak but arrogant human being. Looking at the heavily armed human soldiers blocking the spillway, Magneto let out a disdainful snort. Immediately, the grenade tabs hanging on the waists of the human soldiers were all automatically pulled out due to their abilities, and the rifles they were holding were all released and aimed at themselves. Boom, 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 ta, ta, ta. In an instant, the dozens of elite men sent by Stryker to guard the spillway were all dead. As expected of the crowd, it's truly terrifying. This scene fell in Hawking's eyes, and his brows jumped at the sight. Magneto's ability to control magnetic fields is really the nemesis of modern high-tech weapons. Especially after wearing a helmet to prevent mental intrusion, there is basically no weakness. Recall that in the movie Magneto stopped countless missiles in an instant, raised his hand to lift and transfer the nearly 2,000-meter-long Golden Gate Bridge, and flew an entire large stadium through the air. It was indeed very abnormal. Fortunately, the Magneto in this universe is closer to the movie. If it were the Magneto in the comics, it would be even more abnormal. It hasn't exploded yet. Outside the main control room of the base, Stryker felt dizzy looking at the control room door that was still intact after several blasts. In order to ensure the safety of the main control room, he also deliberately added a small amount of adamantium alloy into the door. Unexpectedly, it turned out to be a trap for himself. Just after passing the surveillance, he suddenly saw his most proud work, Wolverine, appearing in the spillway. Even he couldn't hold back and put it into the base. As a result, it was only after meeting that he realized that the other person was not the real Wolverine, but it was too late. Mystique transformed into him and sneaked into the main control room, closing the main control door. "Colonel, you may not be able to explode even if you use this amount more than 10 times. You need to increase the amount," the captain responsible for directing the door blast explained. No matter how powerful it is, it will threaten the entire dam." Stryker frowned. If there was a problem with the dam and the lake water rushed into the base, all of them would die. "Abandon this place, go to the brainwave enhancement room, and start the mutant extermination plan directly." "But Colonel, the brainwave enhancement machine has just been installed and has not been debugged and tested yet, in case there is a problem." Before his men could finish speaking, they were interrupted by Stryker raising his hand. "It's too late. Since Mystique is here, Magneto might not be far away." He knew Magneto's abilities too well, and it was precisely because of his understanding that he knew how terrifying the opponent was. His men couldn't stop him for long. Sure enough, before he and his men had left the main control room door, he heard the news over the intercom that all the spillway guards had been wiped out. Stop them at all costs. Helpless, he could only issue death orders to the remaining guards. "How long can you delay? The longer you delay, the more likely it is that the plan will be completed." On the other side, under the leadership of Magneto, the 5 Hawkins swept all the way and quickly reached the main control room of the base without taking any action. In fact, at this time, he felt that if he didn't rely on Phoenix Girl to determine the location of the base or borrowed the Mutant Academy's fighter planes, Magneto and Mystique might be able to kill the entire base. The troops at Stryker's base posed no threat to Magneto at all, and the Death Girl who was guarding him was also defeated by Magneto. "Have you found Charles?" Magneto raised his hand and directly removed the entire metal door of the main control room, then looked at Mystique who was controlling the computer over there and asked. After Mystique made some smooth operations, the 3-dimensional projection of the base immediately popped up, and a room at the end of the base was specially marked by her. Most of the power in the base is now being sent to this room. This should be the location of the brainwave enhancement room. "Can you just close it from here?" Storm asked. Mystique shook her head. "It's an independent switch control and can't be turned off here." At this moment, Hawking saw Wolverine turn around and silently leave the main control room. He knew that Wolverine saw Stryker on the surveillance camera preparing to evacuate the base, and wanted to intercept him and figure out his past. Back then, Wolverine was hit between the eyebrows by an adamantite bullet from Stryker. He lost more than 100 years of memory and is living in a hazy state until now. What Wolverine wants most is to get all his memories back. "Pio, you go and catch Stryker with Logan. Maybe we will need him later." Colossus turned around and gave orders to Colossus. Colossus glanced at Storm and saw Storm nodded. Colossus followed and left the main control room. Why did he let Colossus go to help Wolverine? Because even if Colossus and Wolverine are with them, they are defeated by Magneto's ability. It is better to catch Stryker. That guy can't let him escape anymore, otherwise he will be in trouble in the future. And if Wolverine were to go alone, he might not be able to defeat Death Girl, who was protecting Stryker and also had Adamal alloy and self-healing ability. In the movie, Death Woman's fighting skills are stronger than Wolverine. In the end, Wolverine won mainly because of his rich experience and poured the adamantium alloy solution into Death Woman's body. Now who knows whether this will still be the result, maybe Wolverine will be the one who gets fed in the end. You must know that Captain America has become Captain Britain, some things are better to be safe, and you cannot blindly believe in the plot. In the past 2 days together, he had quite a good impression of Wolverine. If he died here, he would have one less friend to talk to in the future. As for why Storm agreed, one is that she trusts Hawking's wisdom, and the other is that since she already knows that Magneto may betray him, she may really need to use Stryker to open the door. The construction drawings of the brainwave-enhanced chamber were forced out of me by Stryker in prison. I know how to close it. In this way, Mystique and I will rescue Charles, while you go capture Stryker and deal with the soldiers in the base." Quote. At this time, Magneto suddenly spoke up and suggested. Storm narrowed her eyes. "No, I think it's better if we go together." "Oh well." Magneto and Mystique looked at each other, and then there was an inexplicable look in their eyes. They didn't expect Storm to be so alert. But now is not the time to fall out, at least until the mutant crisis is resolved. Load Wukong template. At this time, Hawking also silently loaded the protagonist template. From now on, Magneto may rebel at any time, and he must ensure his own strength and safety. "You remind me of a mutant called Psylocke." Magneto raised his eyebrows when he saw Hawking with his hair standing up, his clothes changing, and a stick on his back. Psylocke is a very powerful mutant who can use energy to strengthen his body and transform into various weapons to fight. He feels that Hawking and Psylocke should belong to the same type of mutant. Is she good at fighting? If she can fight, be sure to spar with her when you have time. Hawking, who was in the Wukong template, suddenly lit up. Magneto smiled. "She's quite good at fighting, but it's a pity that she doesn't belong to my brotherhood, but is a subordinate of the black market mutant businessman Caliban. I know you are also very powerful. Do you have time to compare notes?" Hawking stared at Magneto, and his strong desire to fight was almost ready to come out. In his heart, Magneto is quite powerful, and it is precisely because Magneto is strong enough that he, influenced by Wukong's character, becomes very eager to fight with him. Fortunately, he still had his own reason to suppress him. "Want to compete with me? There will be a chance." Magneto was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and then showed a meaningful smile. Everyone walked along the base, and after getting rid of several waves of blocking soldiers, they soon arrived near the brainwave control room. Careful. At this moment, 2 red lasers shot from the side, hitting the 5 people's position directly. It was Cyclops controlled by Stryker with brain fluid. Hawking, who had quick reactions, held Storm in one hand and Nightcrawler in the other, quickly retreated and dodged Cyclops's red shock wave. Magneto, who was walking at the front, raised his hand and moved the machine weighing several kilograms next to him in front of him. "It's a teacher from your school. You can solve it yourself." Leaving behind a few words, Magneto and Mystique left Hawking and the others behind and planned to move on. "It won't take that long, I'll do it," Hawking shouted loudly, and he quickly rushed towards Cyclops. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Seeing Hawking's attack, Cyclops quickly pressed the switch on his laser glasses, and short-frequency red shock waves shot out quickly like lasers. However, Hawking was extremely fast at this time and his movements were quite coquettish. He jumped up and down like a monkey, dodging every shock wave. But the closer you get, the harder it is to hide. Just like a pistol, the gun is fast from 5 steps, and the gun is fast and accurate within 5 steps. Only by being close can you have a chance to win. Hawking, get out of the way. As soon as Storm behind her reacted, she found that Hawking had already rushed out. Before she was ready to activate her abilities to help, Hawking had already rushed to a place less than 1 meter away from Cyclops. But for some reason, he suddenly stopped there. The Cyclops showed no mercy at all, aiming at Hawking's head and shooting a red shock wave. With the power of the Cyclops shock wave, if an average person is shot in the head from the front, they will probably turn into a big exploding watermelon on the spot. Unfortunately, although Storm has a wide range of lightning and storm attacks, she cannot help quickly due to the slow activation time of her abilities and the restrictions in this base. As for the Nightwalker who can teleport next to her, he is a devout Christian and has no professional training at all. He was still in a daze after being attacked just now. But then her eyes widened, because the red shock wave passed directly through Hawking's body, as if Hawking standing there was just a shadow. "It's over." At this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind Cyclops. Before he could turn his head, he felt a pain in his neck and fainted. At this time, Storm discovered that Hawking had unexpectedly jumped above Cyclops, turned over and hit him on the neck. So strong. From Cyclops' sneak attack to the end of the battle, it only takes 3 seconds at most. Within 3 seconds, Hawking knocked out Cyclops, the X-Men's main force with rich combat experience. How could this not surprise her? It turned out that she didn't quite believe Wolverine's compliments about how strong Hawking was. After seeing it with her own eyes, she realized that what Wolverine said was true. If she fought Hawking at close range, she was not sure she could win. You really need wisdom, and you need strength and strength. Picking up Cyclops, Hawking quickly returned to his original position, raised his hand and shouted to Magneto and Mystique, who had just taken a few steps in front. It's solved, don't be so anxious, let's work together. In fact, Cyclops is very powerful. It absorbs the surrounding energy through the body and metabolizes it into concussive shock waves, which are released from the eyes. If you take off the laser glasses that control the shock wave and release it with full force without any distinction, it will be like a human-shaped laser cannon. Its power can easily destroy most buildings and kill most enemies instantly. The key has not cooled down yet and the firing speed is very fast. The only weakness is that his physical fitness is not strong, his fighting ability is relatively weak, and he is easily knocked down at close range. Then there is the common problem of most X-Men: they are too soft-hearted, they can be injured but never killed, which invisibly weakens their combat effectiveness. Just now, Hawking used the afterimage punch to release an afterimage to mislead Cyclops, and then jumped up and knocked him out. If he placed it in a wide enough place to increase the distance and did not limit the output of the Cyclops, he might not be able to win. Looking at Hawking carrying Cyclops, Magneto was both appreciative and speechless. What I admired was Hawking's fighting ability at such a young age. What I was speechless about was that his original plan to use Cyclops to fight off the three of them seemed to have been ruined. Continuing to move forward, in less than 2 minutes, they saw the door of the brainwave enhancement room guarded by a group of elite soldiers. Magneto raised his finger, and a group of elites were massacred by their own weapons without any resistance. But just as they were about to step forward, Storm, Nightcrawler, Cyclops and Mystique all screamed and fell to the ground, covering their heads, and Hawking immediately reacted and pretended to be the same. Because he knew that this was Stryker's son, Master of Illusion, who had controlled Professor. Only Magneto, wearing a helmet that isolates his mental power, is unaffected. He raised his hands, activated his abilities with all his strength, and controlled the brainwave enhancement machine to force it into a closed state. The entire brainwave enhancement room was built by Stryker based on the design drawings he obtained from his mind. He naturally knew all the details. Without the amplification of the brainwave enhancement machine, Professor X would no longer be able to locate mutants, and they would naturally be safe. However, the moment the brainwave enhancement machine was turned off, Magneto immediately opened the door to the brainwave enhancement room, and then pulled Mystique in. Before Storm and others have recovered from Professor X's mental attack, they must close the door to the brainwave enhancement room. The door of the brainwave enhancement room is also doped with adamantium alloy and cannot be broken through violently. Moreover, once a violent attack is performed, it will affect the entire brainwave room, thereby indirectly killing Professor X. So as long as the door is closed, he can rest assured and immediately let Mystique transform into Stryker and give the Master of Illusion an order to kill all humans instead of all mutants. Triple afterimage fist. At this moment, Hawking took action. He was not a mutant, so he was naturally unaffected by Professor Court death. Sensing that Hawking suddenly rushed in, looking like he was about to attack him, Magneto instinctively activated his ability to protect himself. A coin burst out of his pocket and hit Hawking directly between the eyebrows. Although he admired Hawking very much, if Hawking interfered with the plan to exterminate mankind, he would not hesitate to kill him. However, the coin passed directly through Hawking's body just like the shock wave from Cyclops before. Crack! A sound of a broken neck came from behind, and Magneto hurriedly turned to look behind him, with an angry look on his face. It turned out that Hawking did not know when he appeared in front of the Master of Illusion in a wheelchair and then broke his neck. The matter is over. Of course, if you still want to spar with me, I am willing to accompany you to the end. Hawking let go of the Illusion Master's neck and smiled. With the Wukong template loaded, Hawking really wanted to fight Magneto, but compared to fighting, saving people was more important, even with Wukong's character. So instead of directly fighting Magneto to determine the outcome, he used the triple afterimage punch to deceive Magneto and kill the Master of Illusion first. As long as the Master of Illusion is dead, no one can control Professor X, and mutants and humans are all safe. As for the Master of Illusion, although his life experience is quite pitiful, he accidentally killed his mother because he could not control his abilities, and was cruelly turned into an experimental subject by his father. But it had nothing to do with him anyway, so he could only say sorry. He couldn't risk the entire human life to bet that he could defeat Magneto, especially his own life and that of Wanda, Oleg, and Alina. Okay, you're fine. The angry Magneto slowly floated up, and the entire brainwave enhancement room began to tremble. If it weren't for Hawking, he would have killed all the humans on Earth at once, made mutants the masters of the world, and fulfilled his greatest wish in life. Eric, are you here to save me? At this moment, Professor X's weak voice sounded. As soon as the Master of Illusion died, Professor. Seeing this, Magneto took a deep breath and finally let it fall again. Charles, what did you see in the fantasy world, or fight for justice? Unfortunately, they don't follow your rules and want to kill all mutants. Quote. Before the Master of Illusion died, Hawking and the people in the mutant school who prevented him from annihilating humanity were enemies, but now that the Master of Illusion is dead, they are no longer enemies, at least they shouldn't be enemies now. Just like his relationship with Charles, both of them were fighting for the interests of mutants, but they had different ideas and different ways of acting, so they took two paths. But until a decisive moment comes, like when they turned all the top government officials into mutants on Liberty Island and just about to kill all humans, they all need each other's presence. So now at this time, Hawking has become one of the important forces of mutants in his heart. He should no longer be killed, but he needs to win over to his side as much as possible. Eric, people occasionally stumble and lose their way, but that doesn't mean they will be lost forever. Sometimes they just need someone to help them. As long as we work together, we can lead mankind in a better direction. Quote. Faced with Magneto's ridicule, Professor X did not get angry, but still insisted on his own ideas. You are still so naive, Charles. Humanity will only destroy us. We have never coexisted. There is only death and death. Magneto snorted. Seeing that the two were about to enter into an argument, Hawking spoke. How about we go out and find a safe place to talk again? This base is not safe. If there is a problem with a bad dam, everyone will be finished. As for the ideological debate between the two, Hawking was not interested. He was not a mutant, and there was no real right or wrong in this kind of thing. It all depends on what identity you take as your first position. If you think mutant identity is the most important, even if your family and friends are not as important as mutant identity, then kill all humans. If you think family and friends are more important, then regardless of whether they are mutants or not, if someone wants to kill your friends and family, then why not resist just because they are mutants? In a world like Marvel, there's really no need to argue about this. Country and country, race and race, skin and skin, mutants and humans and aliens, Earth and aliens, if you want to really divide them, there are too many. Going a step further, the Earth and the Sun were both created by the celestial gods, and mutants are just the products of human genetic modification by the celestial gods. There is nothing noble or low. Crack. At this moment, the door to the brainwave enhancement room opened, and Storm, Wolverine, Cyclops and others rushed in. It turned out that Colossus and Wolverine worked together to control Death Girl, rushed over with Stryker, and used the password to open the door of the brainwave enhancement room. As for Cyclops and Death Girl, due to the death of Master of Illusion, the brain fluid lost its control effect and returned to normal. Forget it, let's go. When Magneto saw this, he stopped staying. He left a word, turned around and left the brainwave enhancement room with Mystique. Since the plan failed, it was time to part ways. No, let them go. Seeing that Cyclops and Storm were about to take action, Professor X, who had regained some energy, quickly sent a message to stop them. This place is different from the last time on Liberty Island. If there really was a fight here, the entire dam would explode with Magneto's ability. By then Magneto could fly away, and they would be in trouble. And after learning the lesson from this time, it's not like he hasn't changed his mind at all. Maybe having Magneto outside is not without any benefit. After Magneto and Mystique left, Professor X turned to look at Hawking. I'm sorry, I didn't expect that you would encounter this kind of thing when I first came here, and thank you for your help. After Storm came in, He read their memories and learned the whole story, as well as all of Hawking's contributions to protecting the school and saving mutants and humans. He didn't want Hawking to join the fight so early, he just wanted him to go to school well and join the X-Men after graduation. He didn't expect to encounter such a thing when he first entered school. Fortunately, Hawking had help. Otherwise, letting Magneto complete his plan would not be the result he wanted to see. I said I won't let you regret your decision that day. Hawking smiled, but what Professor X said next made him stop laughing. But I also want to say that you are not allowed to smoke or drink in school, at least until you are an adult. After speaking, he looked at Wolverine again. And you, if you give him cigarettes next time, then I will definitely let your mind turn into a 6-year-old girl, and then let Chin give you some beautiful little braids. Hearing Professor X's warning, the others immediately laughed. Finally, after looking at the dead fantasy master with some guilt, Professor X led everyone out of the brainwave enhancement room. The master of fantasy was once his student, but even he couldn't let every student control his abilities perfectly. Meanwhile, outside the base, as soon as Magneto and Mystique stepped out of the spillway, a sharp arrow flew toward his head. He used his ability to freeze the arrow, but before he had time to observe, the head of the arrow exploded, shocking his whole body and taking several steps back. He relied on the support of Mystique, who was quick to respond, before he stood firm again. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.